Message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS T-Drift.
The first message that comes to you is you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
The vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
Good evening, I'm Joe Roop, and this is Lighting the Void. It's good to be back. We are live on KTOK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM. Our website is lightingthevoid.com. It is Tuesday night, January the 22nd, on into the 23rd. Thank you guys so much for joining us across the World Wide Web or wherever you may be listening from. We really appreciate your time tonight. Now, if you want to call in, it's 1-800-588-0335. That's toll free for the United States or Canada. We have a text in the line, which is 501-777-5631. Tonight, we're going to be discussing Hermetic magic and the new Hermetics and the process of initiation with Jason Augustus Newcomb. And so this is the show that we were going to do last week, but we had to reschedule, and so now it's time. And tomorrow night, we're going to have our friends Justin and Paul from the UK. You want to come here tomorrow night for that show, because these are the guys that do the Dreamin' Jaguars YouTube channel, that do the dimethyltryptamine experiences, and that show is going to be intense. So you want to make sure you come out for that. But a lot of the discussions that we've had on this show have been magic schools and curriculums and what is, Hermeticism, all of that stuff. So it gets confusing because there's a lot of subjects within subjects, and one of our favorite things to do is have magicians on the show. We like to have people that talk about encounters and UFOs, and we also like to have magicians and occultists on the show because I think there's something to both subjects. I think they intertwine somehow. One day we'll figure that out. But, a lot of you are going down your first journey learning this stuff, and the reason why I know that is because I get these messages from you, and you end up going down lots of twists and turns. But if you want some real guidance, it's kind of hard to get, right? Because you got all these different schools. You got the Golden Dawn, the OTO, all these different books, and they're all, teaching you this stuff as if, well, it's the golden rule to do this, and it's the golden rule to do that. But you got to remember, some of these books were from a long time ago, and you got to kind of think about how life was living back then too. But we'll get into that. But my guest tonight, Jason Augustus Newcomb, I believe, is one of the greatest teachers in this stuff right now. And I say that because not like he's an all-knowing, all-pervading guru, but he does give you some actual practical guidance through this journey. And he's been on the show before, and now we're going to have him back. But my question with the Golden Dawn was, do I do everyday rituals? Do I got to do this stuff every single day, 5 days a week, 7 days a week, 8 hours a day? There's, like I said, there's all these different books. So what do I do? Well, that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Now, Jason Augustus Newcomb has been a professional hypnotist for nearly 20 years. His numerous published works through Weiser Books, now I believe his Red Wheel Weiser, launched him into the world on a massive scale. And since then, he's engineered and published over 250 audio and visual works. He's a scholar of religious philosophies, giving him the ability to connect with anyone from any background, and his great sense of humor also allows him not only to change the lives of others through practical exercises in consciousness, but also through modes of entertainment. In fact, he's entertained celebrities and executives as a psychic consultant at Hollywood corporate events. He's a spiritual teacher, healer, and writer who has been studying and working with the powers of the mind, mysticism, Western esotericism for over 20 years. He's the author of more than a dozen books on esoteric spirituality, including the acclaimed Book of Magic Power, 21st Century Mage, and the New Hermetics. He's also been an active participant in the Western mystery tradition for nearly his whole life, I would say, studying consciousness and esoteric spirituality since he was around 11 years old. He studied with yogis, magicians, psychologists, witches, and even esoteric orders to learn all he could learn about the Kabbalah and yoga philosophy, esoteric astrology, Zen, tarot, geomancy, Hermetic science, the I Ching and Taoism, Christian mysticism, Gnosticism, and other similar topics. He's extensively studied hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming and obtained certification in clinical hypnotherapy with the American Board of Hypnotherapy and Neurolinguistic Programming through the NLP Society. That's like the Jedi mind stuff. You guys know what that is. We'll talk about that too. But he spent nearly his entire life actively exploring consciousness and has developed a set of unique consciousness altering tools that allow him to facilitate vast changes in consciousness in his students, which help him activate higher states. His main goal, though, is to participate in the evolution of humanity in whatever ways divine providence has ordained for him. He has devoted his life to helping people expand personally and spiritually in a safe and nurturing way. And Jason, it's good to have you back on the program. Thanks again, man.
It's very nice to hear that introduction. I know some of it was taken from my website, but some of it you pulled together yourself, and you make me sound so much more qualified than I am to have this conversation.
That's what I do, man. I guess that's the one thing I'm good at is introducing people as if they're coming down to like a WWE.
I mean, you are a top-notch introducer. Absolutely. So what did you want to talk about first?
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about is what you got going on now. And then I wanted to get into the new Hermetics and talk about some of the, how people get confused with all these different books and schools and orders and,
sure.
How to get through all this stuff.
All right. Well, let's start with my shameless plug that is really, it's kind of a little bit outside of my normal place that I work in, but for many years I've been influenced by this phrase that I heard about that C.G. Jung supposedly in having a conversation. He's one of the early psychiatrists, in having a conversation with Freud. He was talking about the collective unconscious and his sort of more slightly mystical ideas about psychology, and Freud basically said, please stick with the sex theory, because we don't want to have a black tide of occultism spreading across the land with your ideas. Stick with the sex theory. And I thought to myself, why not have a black tide of occultism spread across the land? So right. I've spent about the last decade trying to create things that allow people to get entry into exploring things. And I don't mean in a negative way, a black tide of occultism. I mean a tide of people looking into the crevices and corners of our own psyches and our own inner worlds in a way that will allow us to grow as a species in new directions. I think that for centuries we've kind of clamped down on our own inner exploration and said this is the only way that you're allowed to do it, is with this religion or that religion, with this sort of set of practices or that set of practices. But there's such a rich diversity of different kinds of ways that we can explore ourselves, and so I've kind of tried to put my toe in the water with a bunch of different things and kind of help people to more practically explore it. So one of the things that I'm doing right now is I have an Indiegogo campaign. I don't know if you can give a website for it. Really, it's a complex thing. Indiegogo's.
We could search it though on Indiegogo. What do you have on there?
Yeah. Okay, it's called the Black Pullet Project, and basically there's this French grimoire from the early 19th century, late 18th century, that describes a series of magical talismans that this soldier was given by an Egyptian magician or a Turkish magician who lived in Egypt, and it's essentially a a very sort of simple way of approaching practical magic, but it's very interesting and very the pictures are very evocative and strange, and it's one of the first things that I was really attracted to as like a young teenager. As you mentioned, I've been studying this stuff for a long time. A.E. Waite was a very popular occult author of the late 19th, early 20th century, and he has a book called The Book of Ceremonial Magic, and in it there's a bunch of stuff, a bunch of different grimoires and different occult practices are sort of described, but the black pullet talismans occupy about 20 pages of the book, and they're all these really interesting, very pictorial talismans that are just, and the things that they offer are quite extravagant and powerful, and so it's a fascinating little piece in there. And the book, the Black Pullet, has been translated a couple of times into English, but never very carefully and never very with a great awareness of the place that it sort of occupies historically. And so I have a business partner, and we've done a tremendous amount of research on the book, and we've created a new translation of it, and we've created a couple of different books. That one is sort of a talismanic book, and the other one's a little bit more of an explanatory book. And then we've created all the talismans and all the rings and magic circles. And so, like, we've basically taken the Black Pullet, which is a book that, while it has actually had a tremendous amount of popularity in certain sort of folk magic traditions, like within hoodoo and other sort of American magical traditions, people will take the images and just sort of put them into a mojo bag or put them into some sort of a more modern spell. But very few people have actually really taken the time to like look at what the grimoire actually suggests to learn. And so we've kind of created a whole, I don't want to say a system, that's a little bit too much, but we've organized the material in a way that I think makes it a little bit easier for a person to approach it in a practical way than they could just by looking at the book. So we've got an Indiegogo campaign going, and people can contribute at various levels for as little as, I think the lowest one that's available now is like $25 up to $2,000, depending on how much of the stuff you want to, get a part of. So, and cool. Like I said, this is just something that we've created because we want to like give this stuff to people if they want to explore this. Let's make it available to people. And I've done that with a number of grimoires over the last few years. But this one's probably the most ambitious because there's a lot of rings and talismans involved in it that are fairly complicated. So it's very cool. Check it out, Indiegogo, Black Pullet, and you'll find it.
Well, that's one of the first things that attracted me to your work was when I got into studying the Golden Dawn, Rosicrucian system of magic, whatever you want to call it. I was like, man, where's all these tools and talismans and circles, just all of the cool stuff. And I found, just Google searching, found I think it was Google or YouTube, probably a little bit of both. And this was a long time ago. And I found your website and I was like, well, wow, this guy's got path working, for meditations on the Tree of Life. He's got different incenses and different sigils for planetary work. And here recently, you even got like this pop-up a Vault of Adepti, which I think is really cool, which I don't even think a lot of people know what that is, but I'm thinking, damn, this he's like Toys R Us for Golden Dawn magicians, And
I like to think of myself that way, actually. yeah,
Rosicrucian chess, all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I basically have tried to bring into the world a lot of things that have really just been in books for centuries. I've tried to make them actually available in some form for people to have at a relatively reasonable price. So they're kind of expensive to make, so I can't just give them away. But yeah, I mean, the funny thing is that in terms of my own personal life and personal practice of magic, I tend to take a much more sort of inner planes kind of focus, consciousness focus, rather than on a lot of tools and items. Although over the years I've kind of started incorporating them a bit just because I have them. But my major sort of writings really kind of allow you to kind of get into doing occult work without any of that kind of stuff in your arsenal. Just utilizing your consciousness and utilizing sort of simple tools that you can gather together pretty easily. But this other stuff that I've been doing the last few years, it's really more about me, expanding outward and trying to make some of that stuff a little bit more available to more people, because I think there's a lot of people who lionize or canonize people who do the more grimoire work and act as if those people are somehow better than other magicians.
Right.
And the truth is that they're not. They're just doing something slightly different than some other magicians are doing. So by all means, get your hands on those things and do it yourself and see that it's the same sort of stuff. It's just a different take on it, different set of guidelines, but ultimately the same thing. And, as far as I'm concerned, magic is in consciousness more than it is in any material items or anything like that. And so, I don't want to make people feel like because I've been creating a lot of material things in the last few years that I somehow think that's better than the consciousness stuff. I'm strongly, on the consciousness wagon. It's just that this other stuff is things that help people to sort of focus their energy and to, feel connected with a set of archetypal forces that without those objects, you're not really connecting with. There's a very big difference between standing in an empty room with your eyes closed and standing in the midst of a circle with a wand in your hand and candles burning and the incense burning and there's a big difference in those two things. And it's not just psychological, it's actually connecting with something much more deep than
I was going to ask you
your mind.
So you don't believe this is like the idea of materialism when you're talking about angels and spirits and these other things, you think it's more than material? It's more than all in the brain, so to speak.
Well, I mean, the brain is a pretty limited object.
I don't mean
in
mind.
Comparison with,
you know what I'm saying. Brain is different than mind in that question. Sorry, go ahead.
When we interact with consciousness, there are parts of that consciousness that are ourselves that, you can sort of, when you're talking to yourself. But there are parts of consciousness that we can reach out to that are clearly not ourselves. And some people say that's our unconscious and that that's a psychological thing. But I think that I definitely think there's more to it than that. There is no final barrier between your mind and the mind of the universe. If we look at consciousness as a constant, we are all a part of consciousness. And so all consciousness is sort of interconnected. And yes, I do believe that there is intelligence in this universe, and that in various ways, whether through ritual or through meditation or through just sort of communing with things on a more intimate and non-structured level, we can communicate with elements of intelligence that are outside of ourselves, but ultimately that we're all a part of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And well, it does make a lot of sense. And I needed guidance when I first started reading these books. I'll just give you an example. I read Liam Thomas Christopher's book about the Golden Dawn, and his book seemed pretty strict, right? You don't practice anything else. This is your daily work. These are the books you've got to read, like a professor type. And one of his books was the Mystical Kabbalah, which I read front to back a couple of times. And in the back, she talked about path working. That's kind of how I found you, because I was thinking, path working, what the hell is this? This sounds cool, so I can actually go on a trip through the paths of the Kabbalah. But who am I going to do this with? I'm by myself, and I found your meditations.
And Beyond Fortune is definitely very sort of mysterious about the path workings as well.
Right. Yeah.
Clearly, she had in mind that you were going to contact her or someone that she was associated with and get those deeper instructions, because she definitely says, this cannot be discussed in this book any further than I'm doing it right now. Well, yeah, I could if you chose to write about it, but obviously That's not where you were coming from. But so, yeah, I mean, absolutely. The thing about path working, I think there's path working and path working, and I have explored a number of different people's path workings, and for the most part, they're basically sort of like psychological tours, where you just basically are presented a series of imaginary images to focus on, and that is a valid way of exploring things from a learning perspective, but I don't know how deep that really is mystically. What I have tried to do with my path workings is focus much more on consciousness. I still include the symbols and stuff in there, but I really try and focus in on what that path really means to you as a practitioner. What does it mean to travel from this point to this point in consciousness, and what is the sort of drama that you have to go through in order to move through on a personal level. We can talk about drama in a number of different ways. There's the drama of a show, but then there's also the drama of like the initiatory experience, and that is what I'm attempting to do in my recordings, which I don't think most people really focus on in theirs. I'm not going to name any names or anything, but I've listened to most of the extant pathworking recordings that are out there, and they really are more just about sort of like, now you're talking to Anubis, and Anubis tells you that this is the path of this and that, and here you go, and there's a cubic altar, and on the altar there is a single letter, and it's a bunch of sort of story time stuff rather than sort of personal journeying stuff. And you told me that you've listened to a few of my recordings.
God, yeah, I thought it was great, man. The thing I've done every day is one of the things back when I was working at Verizon, which was my regular time job. I would think about it. I was like, man, I can't wait. Well, that's back when Art Bell was on too. I can't wait to listen to Art Bell. And then when that's over, I'm going to take a trip down this path with Jason. That was like my favorite thing to do. I don't know what you were doing, but you and I were going places. You know what I mean? And you were really good at it. It was cool to me. I like it.
Awesome. So, I mean, so you know what I mean, though? Like, it's more about there's an experience in my path workings. It's not just about presenting a series of images to you. It's more like asking you to go through something, to go through a little bit of a transformative process as you're going on.
And you can, the weird thing is you could really feel the challenges too. If you did it enough, I would think it was like my second week. The second week, I think I really felt a barrier there that I had a trouble crossing through, and it had something to do with motherly type energy. And this was just on like one of the first paths. And I was thinking, damn, what am I going to do when I get through this? Right. And I don't know, you have a real way of like forcing the situation. And I don't even know if you know that, but in these books, these guys, they want you to, like, for instance, in Liam's book, it's like, okay, you're going to do this work and you got to do it for at least 6 months to a year. You're going to have to do these rituals and this stuff. And if the idea is if you get out of the neophyte grade or whatever in less than 6 months, then you've cheated yourself. And nobody these days, I don't believe, has the dedication and patience and discipline to go through this, especially with the way media is now and everything.
The truth is that you can reach complete enlightenment within a couple of months if you just have a serious, dedicated meditation practice, and the person who's guiding you through it knows what they're doing. So the idea that you need to see what's really happening in a lot of these books, and first of all, there's a problem in the whole culture of the thing, because a lot of people that write books are essentially people who are writing things that they read about, and that their teacher read about, and that their teacher read about, without really necessarily feeling all that confident in the fact that they know what they're talking about at all. There's a lot of, and I don't want to cast aspersions upon whatever writer you're talking about, because I haven't read his book. So, but there's an awful lot of people just kind of repeating things, and I think a lot of the idea of doing the same practice over and over again for months and months and months really has to do with the fact that there wasn't a real clear understanding on what we were doing from a technical perspective. And so, but it was just understood that if you just kept doing the same thing over and over again, eventually you're going to start. you're gonna start hitting the vein of what it is that you're supposed to be experiencing. So just keep throwing this person at the wall over and over, and eventually they're going to smash through and get to the next place they need to go. And that was understood. And even if you hadn't really fully done that yourself, you knew that was the process that other people had used. And so you keep repeating that over and over again. But the truth is, with a skillful approach to things, there's no reason to smash your head against the wall for years and years and years without moving forward. If you just simply understand what you're actually trying to do is to move beyond your simple ego consciousness into a place of higher consciousness, that can be handled relatively quickly. There's a thing called scrying. I'm sure you know what that is, but in case any of your listeners don't, it's basically looking into a crystal ball or a black mirror, a pool of ink, or any sorts of things, and where you have a vision of a spirit or some place or some, you ask a question and you look into it and you gain knowledge of things through this visual medium of looking into another world through this device, the crystal ball, right, or the mirror, or the pool of ink, or whatever.
I hate to cut this off, but I want to continue with this grind thing, but I've got to take a break here. I went over by accident. But
sure,
we come back, we'll talk about that, because that's something that I've actually experienced with you too, with the tarot, and we'll talk about scrying and a little bit more Jason stuff when we come back. You guys, we're with Jason Augustus Newcomb. I'm Joe Roop. Stick around.
Is out there.
There's something out here.
And so are we. KTOK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
Do you ever wonder why there's so much show in politics? Do you ever wonder why America's not getting fixed? Ever wonder why our media is not reporting the news? They report only their biased opinion. Are you tired of feeling like a controlled rat? Do you wonder what's next? If you're looking for answers, join me, Ronnie McMullen, for my new show, Deep Waters Radio. That's Deep Waters Radio. Monday nights, 9 p.m. Pacific, right here on The Fringe FM.
Hi, this is Aaron Hunter, host of Real Paranormal Activity, the podcast where we tell real paranormal experiences of people from around the world. And we also conduct interviews with authors, investigators, psychics, and mediums. Real people, real stories, real fear. Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on The Fringe FM. See you then.
When you're always on the go, it can be a hassle getting the proper servings of veggies and fruits into your everyday diet. Life gets hectic, making it hard for us to always make healthy food choices. Not to mention it's pretty expensive. Wouldn't it be great to ditch the long grocery store lines, but still get your fruits and veggies all at once? What you need is Balance of Nature Fruits and Veggies capsules, made with 31 of the highest quality fruits and vegetables and grown right here in the USA. Balance of Nature is 100% natural, safe, and affordable. For a limited time, use discount code TALK and you'll get 35% off your first preferred set of Balance of Nature fruit and veggie capsules, along with free shipping. Call 1-800-246-8751 today. Ready for the real results you want and need? Then you need Balance of Nature. Call 1-800-246-8751. That's 1-800-246-8751 and use code TALK.
When I'm done running with the wolves after hunting down a half-ton bison, I look forward to a mind-teetering escapade evening on The Fringe FM.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
This is Cortana from Shift Happens, telling you to pour a glass and park your ass, because you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM. Shithead.
Folks, this is very important information. What's to be said about CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. Our CBD is made from hemp and has 0.003 THC, which means this wonderful product won't get you high, no matter what amount you take. What does CBD do for the body? My hands are tied. But you can Google CBD benefits and be astounded. When you're finished reading, you'll want to log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. And purchase. Life is good when you feel good. People are tired of pain. People are asking for non-GMO organic products to help them with, you fill in the blank. Legal in 49 states, and again, our CBD is made from hemp. Ancient Life Oil is about helping people one by one by one. If you wonder how good the product is, the CEO takes it every day without miss. AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Have a great day.
Alex. I was thinking about the cops because I was looking at photos and stuff online. It seems like more and more I'm seeing police with tattoos, and it just, I'm sorry. You can't tell the gangbangers from the cops now. I mean, what if they had them on their face? Now, that would be crazy, because that's where it really originates from. A lot of people don't know that. I know it's a big thing now on like rappers and everybody's doing it. Gang members have them. Everybody's kind of doing it now. Musicians and tattoos on their face, crosses, crucifix and stuff like that. Crucifix, that's what's really funny to me, because it's all satanic. All of it. All of it. All of it. Tattoos are straight from hell. Hell sent. Straight from hell. Straight from the bowels of hell. All tattoos. All tattoos. Period. End of story. Oh, you didn't know that? Because they were trying to represent the actual demon gods that they worshipped. Straight from hell. Pure evil. Straight from the bowels of hell from Satan himself.
KTOK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
Howdy, this is Catalina, and you're listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop.
That is our guitar man, Bundy. Welcome back to Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop. We're here with magician and hypnotist and author and hermeticist Jason Augustus Newcomb. And don't forget, after the show tonight, The Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable will be on as well. You know, you can always hang out with us. We're in a lot of places. We stream in a lot of places. The main place is the Fringe FM. We're also over at Spreaker, and there's a few folks there in the chat room if you want to hang out with them as well. And we can take your questions there as well. But before the break, Jason, you were discussing scrying a bit and started talking about the Black Mirror. And that is something that I never had an experience with. I never understood scrying, because you know how they all say in the books, well, scrying is different than astral projection. Well, scrying is different than just visualization. It's different than this and different than that. Okay, well, how is it different? They never could really explain it. You were the first person that took me to a place where I was like, oh, when I was doing your tarot card meditations, I get it now. I kind of got in this weird hypnagogic state, to be honest with you, with the sun card one time, listening to your meditations. But I'll let you explain it, because I can't explain it, to be honest with you.
Okay, well, to begin with, what I was actually mentioning scrying as an example of how people don't really teach things very well. So I'm going to just continue with that, but then we can go back to scrying as a subject. If you look at the literature on scrying out there, it essentially says, sit there and stare at this thing until something happens. It may take a few days, or it may take a week, or it might even take years. You just have to devote yourself to staring at this object until it yields results. I swear to you, you can read, there's probably 15 books that teach scrying out there, crystal ball this and scrying that. And that's essentially what they suggest in it. And that's just so, it's so inadequate in terms of giving you anything that's going to be helpful. You can literally learn to scry within 5 minutes if you are taught it properly. And I'm not going to, waste much time on that right now, but the The difference between scrying and astral projection, what was the last thing that you mentioned? Oh, visualization. Okay. So astral projection is where you completely lose the sense of your physical body, or at least 90%. Some people will have what they consider to be an astral projection experience in which they can still communicate what's happening. And I don't discount that at all. So there's a, they're maintaining a little bit more of a tether to their physical body in that case, but they're actually having an experience in which they're fully immersed in what it is that their visionary experience is. Scrying, you're usually looking at a physical object of some sort, or just having your eyes closed. But in either case, you are seeing something rather than participating fully in it. And it's really, it's not a binary thing. It's more of a smear. There's a place where the two kind of cross through each other a bit. And they're both very different from visualization, because visualization is where you are actually consciously creating an image or consciously creating a scene or scenario that you are utilizing to kind of bring some sort of energy or power into your life. But it's something that is basically self-created. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It makes a lot of sense.
So scrying is really opening up to whatever it is that occurs in your consciousness as a result of whatever process you're using to get into that. Some people will use a ritual. Some people will just ask a question. Some people will just sit there and have their experience. But the truth is, it's much easier to get into a scrying state than most people realize. It's really more a matter of just kind of getting past our Western dismissal of those sorts of inner experiences. So the biggest problem is that we've kind of been trained since we were young that those things that we think of, that we experience that aren't in the physical world or aren't practical are lesser or useless. And so we've kind of been trained not to have those experiences, but we're actually constantly having them. It's really just sort of replugging in something that we all have as a potential in ourselves constantly. If you've ever been going to sleep and started seeing sort of wandering images flowing through your mind's eye, or heard little voices speaking to you or just speaking in general, those are all sorts of scrying experiences. They're the natural kind of openness that we have to things outside of our normal conscious awareness. And different people have different levels of closeness to it initially, but everyone can be trained to open up to it more. There are some people who are extremely, what we tend to call left-brained, which is the very analytical, very sort of rational, practical people who have a little more trouble getting into that state. But even they can pretty easily learn to connect with it once they realize that it actually has a practical value, that it can help you to become more creative, to become more intelligent, to become more thoughtful, to become more emotionally plugged into things that things that are actually quite valuable in today's world that we have not been well trained for. A lot of HR people look at creative thinking as something that is incredibly valuable because it's rather rare. But that's just because we have trained kids not to be creative through the way that we do school and the way that we kind of discount those creative moments, or even tell them to stop when they're being
or
too,
it's all in your mind. That kind of just stop with the imagination thing, and that's what I was wanting to ask you about, is your system of the new Hermetics, which I would like to call it an idea more than I would a system, I guess. But even when I look at some of your magic circles, your Golden Dawn type circle or your new Hermetic circle tells you what each I guess cardinal point really represents, instead of saying, well, that's the East and that's Raphael or whatever. You're more focused on, okay, well, what does this mean? What part of your consciousness does this mean? Right. So that stuff is cool to me, because there is I've gotten to like when I had Gordon White on the program, for example, he was the first magician that came on the program when I was talking about the Rosicrucian magic and the stuff that this big, long system, kind of black belt type system. And he was like, that stuff's ridiculous, man. You don't even have to do it. We need, we're past that now. That's Renaissance stuff. And I was like, okay. So I kind of got into the chaos magic and started studying it a little bit, but I'm still drawn to that system because I feel like there's always something I got to work out. And at least I know, or I feel like that this system will take me through everything to where I don't miss it.
Here's the great thing about the Golden Dawn system. It has a path. Is it a flawed path? Possibly. Is it a path that has some stuff in it that's not necessary? Probably. But it leads from point A to point Z in a structured series of things. Chaos magic and even grimoire magic, if we're totally honest, doesn't really have that. It really is about manipulating the world in various ways without any sort of clear spiritual advancement in it. There are other systems of spiritual awakening that might be more clean than the Golden Dawn system and its related other systems, which I would consider the New Hermetics to be, like you said, the New Hermetics isn't really a system. It's more a set of tools, but it's still aligned with that sort of Kabbalistic 10-step process towards the divine. Buddhist meditation is a lot simpler. It takes you ultimately to the same place. But what's great about the potential that I see in the Golden Dawn system is that it allows you to take a look at all the different aspects of who you are as a person, and to understand what it is that you have built up as your resistance to your own divine enlightened consciousness. And you can work with it and you can move it around and see that it is a malleable thing. And you can develop different aspects of your consciousness and different powers. And ultimately you can, if you follow the path to its completion, you do reach a place where it's not as necessary to focus on those things anymore. What I have done with my tools is tried to make those practical aspects a little bit more explicit, because I think a lot of people miss the opportunity to examine themselves within the magical practices. And for instance, they sit there, or they don't sit there, they stand there and do the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram for months or years. And while that is a practice that certainly builds up your psychic aura in some ways and connects you with certain divine archetypes, it doesn't really help you understand yourself really at all. I mean, there are ways of approaching it that might, but those aren't generally the way that most people are going to approach it. So you can kind of just go through the motions and just sort of spin the wheels for a very long time without really looking at yourself all that clearly.
I get what you're saying.
And I think,
and I've learned that too. Like every time I've tried this stuff, I've taken friends. I'm like, look, let's do this Golden Dawn stuff together and see where it takes us. Because I'm all about experimentation. I'm not really afraid to try anything once, I guess you could say. And all of the friends that have tried this stuff with me, I was like, hey, did you do your rituals today? And they're like, yeah, no, I kind of forgot. Man, nothing's really, and this is what they say, man, nothing's really happening. I don't really get it. And I'm like, okay. So that's kind of when I started learning that it was not for everybody. It doesn't have to.
Sure.
But the one thing I wanted to get across was when I learned all this stuff from Israel Regardie, people see the symbols and the sigils and the crazy little circles and all of it, and they just like, oh man, that's evil. Kind of like you were talking earlier about Freud. It's black occultism, and I'm like, not really. I mean, that's an angelic sigil. That's something. And I never could get across to people how it wasn't as evil as you thought, because you got Crowley and all these other things that happen that people take more notice to, and everything's got to be a big conspiracy. So that's been my struggle with it, to be honest with you. And when you talked about enlightenment earlier, that's another thing I wanted to bring up before I forget about it. Damien Eccles was a guy that was one of the West Memphis Three that talked about that enlightenment is not the end all be all. Everybody thinks to be enlightened is the end all be all. And he said that, it's just one stage of development. After that, then you want to work on developing your consciousness further so that you can get off this, I guess, wheel of samsara or whatever. Do you subscribe to that at all?
The wheel of samsara.
Well, you know, I mean,
I can't deny that all that stuff is present within experience, you know. But I think that the wheel of samsara is itself a self-fulfilling problem in consciousness. You know, I mean, yeah, there's a tendency for people to, you know, if they realize that they can reincarnate, they will go, yeah, well, let me be a richer, smarter, faster, sexier person the next time around, right. rather than going, oh man, you mean there's a way I could get out of this system, like not have to do this over and over again? Absolutely. I think that there's a tendency in people's minds to limit their growth and move in less than evolutionary ways. Absolutely. And yes, I think the wheel of samsara is one description that kind of describes what's going on to an extent.
That's why I talk about it, Jason, because everybody's like, this is a slave planet. It's a slave consciousness system. You know, especially in the UFO community, a lot of people have that mentality. And I'm thinking, well, okay, well, if it's a slave planet, how do we get off of this thing? And the only books that I've ever found that talk about getting off this thing are like the Western magical tradition, where they put you in this forced, I guess, boiling pot to do it all in one lifetime, or because when I study Buddhism, that to me it's just all about enlightenment, and that's it. And then I'm like, okay, so where do you go from there? Once you get to Zen, where do you go? Right. So what's the point?
Well, I mean, it's ultimately the same thing. I mean, you're talking about the same thing. You realize the self in the small s self is a fiction, and that it's, you know, it's not a conclusion, it's a process, and you move past it. And that is, you know, there's the technical side of things. It's sort of like not necessary to talk about because most people aren't really there yet. But I mean, the truth is, the more that you kind of unburden yourself of things, you know, attachments to things, the more you're going to be free. The more that you continue to burden yourself. And one of the biggest burdens is fears about overlords and so forth. You know, that's like, right. So if you're having a bunch of conspiracy thoughts in your mind, you're actually like really trapped. You know, I think one of the biggest problems in the sort of 2,000 years ago spiritual movements is that everybody kept accusing everybody else's gods of being the evil overlord and their god of being the freeing one. And it's like, well, which one is it? Who's you know, are the angels bad, or are the devils bad? You tell me. You know, but I mean, ultimately, all that is just stuff that people are holding on to and entrapping themselves within a spiritual dimension that doesn't really have anything to do with anything. You know, it's all a part of the continuing process of unfoldment on this planet. And yes, we will evolve past it most likely at one point or another. And yes, it is possible for in one lifetime for you to recognize all of the illusions and move past them. Is it possible to then, you know, cease reincarnating? I don't know. I'm incarnated now, so obviously I didn't succeed the last time around. You know, so.
Well, I don't remember my past life. That's the one thing that freaks me out. Everybody's like, well, we just keep reincarnating and forgetting and then reincarnating. I'm like, well, how do you know you forgot? How do you know? You know, those are those doubts that rise up in my head. And I got to tell you, nothing started happening to me spiritually in my entire life. Nothing. Until I got into the astral travel aspect. It's kind of like I was reading Robert Monroe's books at the same time I was doing just regular rituals like Kabbalistic cross prayers and stuff like, and that's, you know, I had a few liftoffs, like ethereal out of body, like I could see myself sleeping type stuff happen. And that's what hooked me, you know. Robert
A. Monroe gave you the key, but then you went back to doing Golden Dawn stuff. Anyway.
Well, it was actually Robert Monroe opened my eye. I was, you know, just opened my eyes to this other world, this internal realm, so to speak. And I think somewhere along the line, as I was looking up astral travel and all of this, I came across Magick, where And I was thinking, well, what if Robert Monroe had these tools that the magician had when he was going through all these fights and stuff with all these entities in the astral realm? Like maybe he would have had some type of a guidance system, And we want to look at everything like it's so literal, but it's more like a set of training tools, to get you through it, I guess.
Sure. And I think that there's value to road works, and that didn't ever subscribe to any particular system. I think that is important, but you're right. He did sort of hit his head against the proverbial wall a lot because of that as well. So, but I mean, we're probably talking about stuff that some people haven't ever read about.
I've talked about Robert Monroe enough on here. I hope eventually,
endlessly.
Yeah, man, I hope eventually somebody picks the books up, So it's like, we're coming up on a break here, but what I would like to know, and I don't know if I ever got to talk to you about this, was I'm always curious how people stumble upon magic as a life path. It's not like most people you talk to, they're like, well, I want to be a fireman or a lawyer or an engineer, and I want to do this stuff. And then 1 in 100 people are like, I want to be a very advanced occultist and wizard, and and everybody kind of stops and looks at him like, what? So it always takes...
I will be happy to tell that story. And the truth is, it has as much to do with technology and even Robert Monroe to an extent,
really,
as anything else. Yeah, that's
funny. That's exactly.
I don't think he'd written his last book when I read his first book, but yeah.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I'm definitely interested in hearing that one. But guys, we do got to take our top of the hour break. If you have any questions, I know I just got a couple of texts just a minute ago, but you can also email the show at contact@lightingthevoid.com. If you want to email the show, I'll try to get to it as well. We'll be right back with Jason Augustus Newcomb. Don't go anywhere.
Hey, let's all get gay. Mississippi and a man sit down up on that stool. If you need a helping hand, you'll be rewarded. Don't you feel like a doggone fool? Close the windows and lock the door.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now for a special radio offer from Angioprim. That's angioprim.com/radio. ANGIOPRIM. Angioprim.com/radio or call 877-882-7221. That's 877-882-7221.
Magic, the occult, history, health, news. These are just a few subjects discussed on my radio broadcast, The Secret Teachings. I offer unique and objective perspectives on new and old subjects alike, while welcoming guests and presenting my own research with no filter. Visit my website for more information and to subscribe to my archive at www.thesecretteachings.info, and find me on The Fringe FM live Monday through Friday, midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern on The Fringe FM.
Hi, this is Sammy. Join us in the Deep South as we're lighting the void with Joe Roop on The Fringe FM.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Do you want to lose weight but have no idea where to begin? The Fast Start Diet, a 3-day weight loss plan, is the answer. 3 days of nutritionally balanced, calorie-restricted meals delivered right to your door. No shopping, no measuring, and no cooking. Everything is prepared for you and ready to eat at home or on the go. The Fast Start diet has all the amazing benefits of intermittent fasting without starving. We've helped thousands of people who have struggled to reach their weight loss goals. Isn't it time we helped you? With the Fast Start diet, you'll lose weight and feel great.
Find us on Amazon or go to faststartdiet.com and use promo code POWERSAVE to get 10% off your first box. And as a special bonus, we will include our #1 rated appetite suppressant spray free with your order. Whatever your diet plans are, start with us at faststartdiet.com and use promo code POWERSAVE.
Hey folks, guess what the #1 phrase that Life Change Tea receives by email? You ready? We love this tea. We love this tea. Time after time, week after week, we love this tea. Life Change Tea gives you more energy, a beautiful cleansing, and fulfills its slogan perfectly. The tea that makes you go. So if you want to be on your health game, log on to getthetea.com and order Life Change Super Strength Tea. Packages come in a 1-month supply, and when you brew this stuff, wait until you see the results. Aren't we all about the results? And with a lot of people's health struggling, we can use a little bit of help. Doctors will tell you disease starts in the gut. So log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Be our next email saying, I love this tea. I love this tea. Get the tea at getthetea.com. Helping America one tea bag at a time.
Yohoy there. Gigi here.
And I'm Cortana, and we're going to bring you on a journey through all things paranormal, metaphysical, ufology, and even psychedelic. On our show,
Shift Happens, live, Fridays at 7 p.m. Pacific. That's 10 p.m. Eastern on The Fringe FM.
And remember, kids, don't feed the Archons. Feed ducks instead.
Duck up.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void. We're here with Jason Augustus Newcomb, author of the new Hermetics. And before the break, I was asking you, Jason, how did you get into the magic? Because this is never a typical type story. And you said that you'd share that with us, so I'm ready.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually shared it a few times before, but I'm gonna tell you some parts of the story that I don't think I've actually shared before.
Okay.
So, when I was about 11 years old, I was involved in a Unitarian Universalist church up in the Northeast, where that particular denomination is fairly popular, and the Unitarians believe that there's one God and that everyone goes to heaven. So they're Unitarians and they're Universalists. But that's just sort of the facade. It's really just a bunch of like super liberal people who are what we would call today social justice warriors. But they're, they basically were like, you're a young kid, figure out your own spirituality. So one of the weeks of Sunday school, someone brought in a book on different forms of divination, and there was the I Ching was in it, and tea leaf reading, palm reading, but then there was a whole section that had all the 78 cards of the Rider-Waite Tarot in it. And I was just really fascinated by those images. Like they drew me in. I felt a sense of sort of, that mystical sense of I need to explore this more. And so I went to the local New Age store, and after saving up some money or something, I bought myself a pack of tarot cards, which I still have. Started doing readings. I actually volunteered at that same church for an auction to do a reading for someone, even though I'd never given anyone a reading. I'd be like, someone bought a reading from an 11-year-old, which must have been very cute. I basically, sat her down and put out the cards and had the little booklet that comes with it, and just kind of like read to her what the meanings of the cards were. That was my like initial introduction to the world of occultism.
Really? Okay.
Within a year or two of that, I had a friend who came up to me and said, "Hey, our mutual friend has a book about witchcraft." I'm like, "What do you mean? It's a book about old, like old stories about witches?" And he's like, "No, it's a book that has actual magic spells in it, and you can do the spells and make stuff happen." And I was like, "What?" And I thought to myself, well, I mean, if there are books on this subject, they must have them at that store where I bought those tarot cards. So I went back to that store, and sure enough, I found the section, and they had a big magic section that had both, witchcraft-oriented magic and more sort of ceremonial magic. And I bought a number of books over the next year or so, but the one that I don't know if it was the first one that I purchased, but it was the first one that really drew me in was that A.E. Waite book that I mentioned earlier, the Black Pullet talismans and rings are in. And that particular book seemed, even though like he was very dismissive of much of it, it seemed to contain the real old magic that was quite good. I also bought Ray Buckland's complete book of witchcraft.
That's a good one.
Like a tall blue book, which was somewhat disappointing to me, honestly, because it was more about, although it did have some good stuff about magic,
more about
in it,
pagan
a little
stuff,
bit.
Right? Yeah,
it's more about like worshiping the god and goddess, and I was like, I'm not really all that interested in it. It's like, yeah, sure, I can accept that there's a feminine aspect to the divine, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That totally makes perfect sense to me, but it didn't seem like I needed to like throw myself into it. So anyway, my friend and I don't remember what it was from that book, but the book of ceremonial magic. We just were sitting in his living room, and he was like, let's do something from the book. And I was like, okay, well, here's like this invocation of some spirit. I really don't remember what it was. And we read it very sonorously, and he started going, "Jason, look, the pictures on the wall, they're all crooked now." And I don't know whether that was something mystical that happened, or if he just noticed for the first time that his parents don't hang pictures correctly. But like, it at that moment, it impacted me in this way, like, whoa, like we really changed something, the whole atmosphere of the room had changed a little bit, and the pictures had gotten crooked. And, it was a powerful experience, even though it was very sort of spontaneous. And that really kind of drew me in. And then that same friend, a few months later, he wanted to, have a girlfriend or something. I was like, I think there's like some love spell in one of these books that I've purchased. And so we did a love spell, and sure enough, he had a girlfriend within the next week.
Oh man.
So, I was like, whoa,
that'll draw you in, right?
This stuff just really works. So, and that was it. So, that's the story of the genesis of it all.
That is a very awesome story, man. Because most people, when I ask that story, they tell me some story of high morality. It's all about spiritual enlightenment, and they just looked at things different. But your story is actually the typical story of how most people get into magic. And there is this theory amongst a lot of magicians that magic is kind of its own entity, and this is why it seems to work for people that try it, like some type of beginner's luck where it wants to say, hey, look at this, I work. Do you find that
the world isn't quite the way you imagine that it is?
Yeah. So you find that's true too, right? With beginners, a lot of times, so somehow or another.
Absolutely. Although I have to, without wanting to sound arrogant or anything, I don't think that I've had like a period after that where it stopped working. It just sort of like, I think that one of the things that happens is you do something that works well, and then you kind of go, maybe I need to be a little more circumspect with this, because like, if I can change things in the universe, maybe I need to like really know what I want to change before I do too much more of this. And I think that slows people down a little bit for the most part, or they just get frightened of the demons that appear in the night. And
that's what I find a lot too, because I've even had people call in the show and have asked me, and which I respect this question, like, hey Joe, why do you keep doing shows about magic? It's lighting the void, and you talk about UFOs and all this stuff, but why are you messing with this stuff? Why do you want to do this stuff? And I, just kind of laughed it off, and I said, well, you don't understand it. But after that show, even the day after, I started thinking, well, why in the hell am I doing this? Really? Like, why am I doing this? And the more I thought about it, it comes to be because a lot of times we feel powerless in our lives. You know, we feel like we're just subject to everything and we have no power. And then when a book comes along or a teacher or something comes along in your life and puts this thing in front of you and says, look, you know, life and the universe isn't really what you think it is. You have a lot more power than you know. I mean, come on, man. Most people are going to look into that, wouldn't you think?
They should. Except that a lot of people feel like, well, no, I mean, that's the devil talking to you. Or something,
right.
You know?
Yeah. But I've never experienced anything like, to be honest with you, the only times I've experienced true terror and evil has either been in a nightmare or when I pretty much brought it on myself, you know, because I was focused on the fear. Have you ever had any like dark, crazy, evil things happen in your journey through this?
Absolutely. But I've been involved in a lot of groups, and I think that when you get involved with different people other than yourself, there's a stronger tendency for people to kind of send things towards you and to be malevolent towards you. And I think that's where a lot of it comes from, honestly. It's from other people just wanting to like either exert their power over you, or they're upset because you know, got the girl that they wanted or something like that. You know, like I think the evil forces in the universe, the darker spirits and whatnot, I think they come if you call them, but I don't think that they really mess with you all that much if you are just sort of walking along. But there's a lot of like, you know, low level stuff that comes at you, but it's you know, and I think a lot of people succumb to it, but it's honestly something that you can just go, no, not interested, and off you go, and then it goes away, you know. But I think that as a trainer of people, I know that there's a certain group of people, and it's largely people who have grown up in a very religious setting, who, as soon as they start practicing things in a magical sense, very simple things like my beginning new Hermetics practices, they will have quite disturbing demonic experiences in the dark of night, you know, like while they're laying in bed and stuff. And I think they kind of call it upon themselves. You know, they're feeling guilty about what they're doing or feeling worried about it, and so they either create it in their own minds or they create a fertile ground. They give food to things outside of themselves that come and to feed off of their fears, you know? So.
I think I've actually done that myself. I've talked about that on here because I started seeing black shadowy things trying to prevent me from doing all this stuff. And I've always wondered in the back of my mind if it was that guilt, you know, because I was raised up in a church, right? Like church stuff. So there's always that embedded subconscious guilt that you got to deal with. And I don't think anybody really understands except maybe Carl Jung, you know, and all of the people that study this stuff, but everybody else doesn't really understand where I'm coming from when I say that. It's just buried in there, man. It's not something that you can overcome easily, even if you know it's bullcrap. It's really weird.
Well, and the thing is, I don't think it's entirely bullcrap, but I don't think that the standard church answer is the correct answer either. You know, I do think that when you kind of like open yourself up to alternate realities, there's some stuff at the lower levels of, you know, of outside of the physical that there are like shadowy things and stuff, but they're not, you know, they don't have much power over you unless you can develop that power. You know, you can build them up into pretty scary things. And, you know, who doesn't love that? Like, you know, if you walked into a room and everyone's like, oh my God, it's Joe. Like, you're like, yeah, it's Joe. Like, sit down. You know what I mean? Like who doesn't get pulled, you know, so when you give some shadowy thing a lot of attention and scary power, yeah, it's going to grow into something quite terrifying. But if you just are like, no, I'm not interested, it dissipates.
Yeah, I think another thing too is you and I have both read Robert Monroe's first book, right? So when he was talking about the entities that he got into fights with, where he was literally praying out to Jesus, and he was an atheist, crying and screaming and fighting these things for his life in this other realm. It was terrifying reading that, and I was thinking,
it's really weird.
How do
what's weird? I don't.
Magic may be the answer to get rid of that. That's another thing that I was looking into magic for.
Absolutely. Although I don't know if there's a ceremony, I think it's more just the magical attitude that can get rid of that.
Yeah.
Realizing that it can't harm you, and that you just need to just trying to physically fight something like that is not really the way to go. But what's interesting about Robert Monroe is that I was just thinking about this the other day. Those entities are mentioned in his first book, but in his second two books, they never come up again. And he ties up a lot of stuff from the first book in future books, but he doesn't ever explain that at all. There's no, if you have a listener who's read all those books more religiously than I have, and can come up with a place where but like those entities occur in the first book, but then in the second book you get this sense of his, sort of like opening up into a larger worldview, and then in the third book even more so. But there's no further mention of those like fighting entities.
Yeah,
are they belief system things? Maybe, I don't know.
I don't know, but they did just come out of nowhere and just start tussling with him. You're right. I guess he moved past it. Who knows? But he didn't really talk about. He didn't even talk about his theory as to why they never showed up anymore. So that's a good point.
Right. Yeah, because he really, by the end of that third book, he's got pretty much a philosophy of the universe that he's developed. Like there's like a clear sort of sense of. It's not quite clear where it goes, but but there's a sense of that he has gained what he considers an understanding of what Earth is all about, and what the various religions are all about, and the history of things, and yada yada yada. Like he's and then you have people on that come on like Thomas Campbell, who was one of the people that helped him create Hemisync, who went on to he's got his old theory. And, he came on this show and told me, he said, well, he was the physicist in the book. And he said, well, Robert thought that he was going to these other places, and really he wasn't going anywhere. He was going in his own consciousness. And I was like, okay. So everybody's got their theories, which his is, pretty good. It's pretty detailed. It's My Big Toe is like 3 books worth of theory, but, well, what I find, the idea that someone is just exploring their own consciousness doesn't really negate the idea that it's also an explanation for the universe, because ultimately consciousness is the only thing that we can tie our horse to. It's the only thing left. The universe is a series of empty spaces with particles that aren't really anything, filling in the void. The only thing that is our consciousness. And so, yes, we can be delusional, and we can, create a bunch of stories that aren't necessarily completely describing anything. But one of the things that's kind of refreshing in Robert Monroe's books is that he doesn't ever claim to be having the authoritative voice, just that he's reporting what he's experienced, and that's rather nice. Most people who've had the sorts of experiences that he has will tend to sort of try and tell others how to live their lives, and he doesn't seem to be doing that. And that's why Robert Monroe was someone. He wasn't the first books that I read, but he was someone that was very important to me at a certain point in my life. Right. About 17 or 18 years old, I found his book actually in a college library, and was just like, "What? I've never."
Yeah, this can't be real, right? Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
No. I'd read I can't remember their names off the top of my head right now. There's a popular book from the 30s or so that has that talks about out of body experiences that I'd read, and so I was familiar with the concept of it. And of course, in the Golden Dawn, which I was also familiar with, they talk about sort of the spirit vision and stuff. But his descriptions were so outside of any kind of spiritual model whatsoever, that it really it had a strong effect on me, and made me feel like, the things I discover, I'd like to share, but I want to try not to push any kind of specific spiritual agenda on people, because there's so many different ways of interpreting anything.
Right. Well, I want to get back to your methods here too, because this is what's important to me. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show is because a lot of the people that are studying this stuff from, I guess, a Rosicrucian aspect or a Golden Dawn aspect or whatever, they're getting a lot of books like Donald Michael Craig's book or Liam's book or Chick Cicero's book. And it's this long, it seems like years and years of practice to go through these elemental grades. And then you have courses that kind of help, or stuff and tools to help a soul practitioner go through these things. But you also have a course where you created, I think it was like the 60-day Adept Challenge. And so I always wanted to ask you, that I didn't get to ask you before, was the process of becoming what's called an adept, right? You hear that word a lot in magic, to be an adept. And from what I'm getting is you think that you could actually speed that process up. Like you said earlier, it doesn't take that long to become enlightened, which kind of negates the whole, I guess, Golden Dawn theory, or does it? What are your thoughts?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think that the Golden Dawn theory is all well and good, and I think that it has a lot of value. I do think that, first of all, people in that time period certainly had more free time to mess around with things, and I think that they were coming out, like, basically, there's a story of the chief adept, Mathers, had a stepson named Alan Bennett, who actually was one of the people who was one of Crowley's inspirations and teachers within the Golden Dawn. But Alan Bennett had read somewhere that if you just say the word Shiva over and over again, that you'll destroy the universe and obtain enlightenment. So he started just saying, like just sitting and saying Shiva over and over. And Mathers freaked out and was like, stop this silly blasphemy. Because ultimately he was coming from a Christian perspective, and the idea of someone destroying the universe by saying Shiva over and over again was alien to the whole way that he looked at the world. So, we have evolved so much from that perspective. Yes, there are plenty of people who are still in that paradigm. Absolutely. But there are so many people who are not in that paradigm at all. So the Golden Dawn system, it becomes a little clunky to a lot of people. To someone who's been raised in a Christian background and who needs to have some sort of, Hebrew or mythological constructs in place in order to, feel comfortable doing these esoteric practices, mm-hmm. it still makes sense to do. But if you're coming from more of like a humanist place where you just are sort of, I know you grew up in the church, but it sounds like you kind of like moved into more of a psychological perspective on things.
I got past the nursery rhymes. Yeah.
What's that?
I got past the nursery rhymes, believing in the nursery rhymes. Yeah.
So, at that point, because there's such a strong presence of that sort of, oh yeah, it's all just a bunch of nursery rhymes. A lot of the things that the Golden Dawn has to offer are of limited value, honestly. What it continues to offer, though, is a lot of stories and myths and archetypal descriptions of things that excite the imagination and excite the spiritual journey. And so I don't think there's any reason to, throw the baby out with the bathwater on the Golden Dawn. But I do think a lot of their system really has to do with kind of like this slow, measured progress, because they're honestly fearful that the devil is going to grab you along the path if you're not careful. So from a technical perspective, what really a person needs to do in order to obtain pretty much all of the spiritual things is to learn to concentrate the mind and to stop having a strong discursive process going on while you're doing what you're doing. In other words, if you're doing a practice and you're thinking to yourself, am I doing this right? What did I forget to put the laundry in the dryer. Those sorts of things. While you're doing a practice, you're not really going to be getting the most out of it. But if you have learned to kind of move into that state where you are just focused on absolutely on what it is that you're experiencing right then and there, you're going to have results pretty easily. So that's really the gating factor. And I think that, like I mentioned earlier, this whole throwing your head against the wall over and over again is largely learning that technique of quieting the mind. However, if we just learn to concentrate on multiple tasks at the same time, visualizing, feeling things in our body, hearing things, smelling things, tasting things, so that our whole sensory input is involved in what it is that we're doing, we can much more quickly move past the rudimentary phases of these things. So, if you just literally are just going through the motions and saying things for 6 months straight without involving any more of your consciousness than that, and it's going to take you a long time. It might even take you 6 years before you really feel plugged into anything. But if you're putting your whole attention into it with all of your different senses, with your whole consciousness, you're going to find you're getting there much quicker. And if you look at the instructions of these groups, they don't contain anything about that. There's no statement. Make sure that you're experiencing the energy of this. Make sure that you're the closest is really Crowley. He's kind of getting there with what he's writing about, because he, first of all, he mentions this yogic concentration that he sees as being of high importance. And then he mentions, trying to make when you're tracing a pentagram in the air, trying to make it so vivid that it could possibly catch a candle on fire if you were so inclined. That sort of concentration is for sure what you want to do, but it's not to think that you're actually trying to catch a candle on fire is missing the point. What he's really saying is put yourself into it so vividly that you could believe that it's possible, that the fire that you're creating from your pentagram that you're tracing in the air is that powerful that it could catch a candle on fire. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. I'm not going to say for certain, but that's irrelevant. The concentration and the vividness that you're creating for yourself is really the important thing. And a lot of people say, well, I don't know how to make things vivid, but the truth is we do. The reason they're not vivid is because we don't make them vivid. We literally start thinking about other stuff while we're in the midst of it, because we've got our. Did I remember to like that Instagram thing that
right.
Our minds are all over the place, and that it's always been true of humanity. We have a lot of things going on in our consciousness. There's tigers in the trees, and that doesn't make any sense. There's no tigers in the trees.
So it's the ability to focus without any thoughts interfering or beliefs or subconscious corruption.
Right. Exactly. You're just there doing it.
Which is the whole essence of magic and manifestation and increasing consciousness, and then it's everything, right? Which is something I think we kind of could do as kids, but they took away from us a little bit.
And it's so simple that it seems like it's hard, and that's really the essence of the whole thing. And I think that if you can just embrace that whatever you think you can do is all you need to do, because it's simple. It's not a difficult thing. It's just you embracing that original self that got trained out of you.
I got you. Well, we only got a few minutes left here with Jason, guys. We're going to take our bottom of the hour break. I will get to your questions. I do see them, and then we're going to talk about his projects before we let him loose here, guys. Thanks for staying with us here on Lighting the Void. We'll be right back with Jason Augustus Newcomb.
From Studio 303, it's the Stranger Than Fiction News right here on the Fringe FM, bringing light to the stories that surround us. New documents expose secret U.S. UFO research project. Newly released documents from the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, or the DIA, reveal more detail about the secretive Advanced Aerospace Threat and Identification Program, or ATIP, though which the U.S. researched what many might consider to be fringe science, like stargates, warp drives, and extra dimensions. Details of the program, which officially ran from 2007 to 2012, thanks to a $22 million in annual funding from the defense budget, were obtained and shared last Wednesday by Nick Pope, a British researcher who previously investigated reports of UFO sightings for the UK's Ministry of Defense. The congressional letter obtained by Pope includes a list of 38 products that ATIP investigated for the DIA. The purpose of ATIP was to investigate foreign advanced aerospace weapon threats from the present out to the next 40 years. Source of this story, BendedReality.com. And a new, larger, and more powerful Hadron Collider is being planned. There have been many conspiracy theories and warnings regarding the existence and usage of a machine such as CERN's LHC, but one can only imagine what could potentially go wrong with even a larger and more powerful version. Scientists at CERN are planning a successor to the Large Hadron Collider with 10 times the power. Built between 1998 and 2008 in collaboration with more than 10,000 scientists and engineers from around the world, the Large Hadron Collider officially is the world's largest machine and consists of a ring approximately 27 kilometers in circumference, which is situated near Geneva, Switzerland. Now, scientists have started to look ahead to an atom smasher's successor, a monster of a particle accelerator that will be 4 times as large and 10 times as powerful. Known tentatively as Future Circular Collider, the new facility will take 2 to 3 decades to complete, but will have the potential to open up new fields of particle physics. This too, posted at BendedReality.com. And now it's time for this edition's Fun Fact. Male dogs lift their legs when they're urinating for a reason. What they're trying to do is leave their mark higher so that it gives off the message that they are tall and intimidating. Good luck, Chihuahua. And that wraps it up for another edition of the Stranger Than Fiction News right here on the Fringe FM. I'm Vance Nesbitt, anchor and news sorcerer.
The truth is out there.
There's something out here.
And so are we. KTOK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
All right, everyone, this is Justin from the UK. Excuse the chitty. If you're into the Fringe and you want to hear the brass tacks, my old china plate, Joe Roop and his guests on Lighting the Void will open your mince pies. You need to shut your north and south and use your 10-speed gears and listen to them bubble. You could hear a Barry Crocker, no Brussels, but he ain't no holy friar. Anyway, you beat a Barnaby Rudge and take a butcher's.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone app or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Your home has needs. It needs a healthy, dry environment all year round. Start by getting rid of the worst air in the basement and crawl space, where the problems begin and make the whole house sick. Introducing the new Smart Wave Ventilation Unit. It has advanced technologies to continuously reduce moisture, mold, and odors, and expel radon, gases, and pollutants. And now, Wave units include carbon monoxide detection to automatically expel air at a high rate and send you an alert. It also has an app so you can remotely monitor the conditions. Wave is a comprehensive, maintenance-free, affordable solution that will transform your entire home. Protect your home and family with what it needs. Give it a new smart Wave ventilation unit. For more information, call 888-717-WAVE. That's 888-717-WAVE. Or go to dryhealthyhome.com. That's dryhealthyhome.com.
Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
To call Joe, pick up the phone, dial 1-800-588-0335, toll free from the United States or Canada. You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. You guys don't forget you can sign up for the newsletter. Just put your name and email in there. We got another one about to come out. I know I should do it more frequently, but it's kind of like a bi-monthly thing. But the last newsletter people signed up for, they got 4 free ebooks, and everybody really appreciated that. But we're here with Jason Augustus Newcomb, author of the new Hermetics and the Book of Magic Power. I own that book, by the way, and I got to tell you, Jason, that book was one of the first books that helped me understand the subconscious link to magic. You know, it was a lot about magic and but I was like, okay, I really understand the subconscious link to magic now. And when I got that book, but what I really want to do is get to some of these questions, but also talk about your methods. And I was watching one of your videos, because you've got a YouTube channel too, that was kind of talking about, okay, if you're coming to my side of the fence here and you think I've got this big system of magic, it's not really a big system, of magic. It's more of a lot of tools to help you with whatever system you're in. Now, am I in the ballpark with that? Am I right about that at all?
I mean, that was absolutely my intention when I started creating stuff, is that I didn't imagine that people were going to consider me to be a system, that they were just going to utilize my stuff within whatever it is that they were doing. Because like I've mentioned a couple of times, I try not to be too sectarian. I try to make it universally applicable. But there are quite a few people who have ended up, considering themselves new Hermeticists and have, made it a system of magic for themselves. So, which has made me actually expand stuff and include more things over time. Yeah,
demand has started coming out of everywhere. So you're a perfect example of all of the people that were studying things like the Golden Dawn, the OTO, the AA, or any of these traditional Western systems that needed help. And that, I would say, as you started putting things out, the demand probably increased a little bit. And so you just kept trying to fulfill the demand. And see, now you got all these tools and circles and audios, which is fascinating stuff. And it's really effective, by the way. I mean, if anybody just wants to see how effective it is, you've got some simple stuff like hypnosis audios that don't really have that much to do with the magical process, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, that was where I started making recordings, was just doing hypnosis stuff. And then I realized, I could really make these recordings for a lot of these magical processes and really make them a little bit more streamlined and easy to work with. It's a little bit of a challenging thing to try and make a magical recording, because it's a little different than hypnosis, but I think I've done okay at it. Maybe someone in the future will do even better. But one of the things you mentioned, I think during the break, was my 60-day Adepthood challenge. I don't know if you mentioned that on air. That is something that I now have created an interactive course online with the videos and stuff. So it's a 60-day program that basically what it does is it teaches you all of the intellectual aspects of the Western mystery tradition, the zodiac, the geomancy, the tarot cards, the planetary magic, all of the different thought the Tree of Life, and it does it in this visual and mnemonic way that helps you to kind of put it all together into a single functioning form. And then it also teaches you a number of ways of connecting with the energies of the things in a fairly simple way. So while I would never say that doing the 60-day Adepted Challenge makes you an adept, it certainly gives you most of the knowledge that you need in order to kind of make that step into feeling like you're, in that place. And so if people go to my website, jasonaugustusnewcomb.com, and they find the workshops link within that, there's links to those things. The 60-day Adepted Challenge. I also have a class on the out-of-body experience, which combines, my Robert A. Monroe stuff with a number of other more modern practices that have really helped me to kind of feel really confident in my ability to create out-of-body experiences for myself and to teach them to others. Also have a one on visionary magic, which teaches scrying in just a few lessons in a very easy way that you will be able to scry at the end of it with, at the level of
at a high level,
true magician. Yeah. And I mean, everyone, I can't guarantee that because everyone puts their own gating factors on things, but yeah, you'll have the technology that you need in order to do it at a high level. Whether you allow yourself to feel that way or not, it's up to you. So that's all cool. But what are the questions that are coming through?
Well, I would say one of the questions I got was about the Bible, and I understand that certain people still are Christians and stuff. I get that. When I say still are Christians, I want to say real quick that I don't negate the Bible. I think it's an awesome magical text in that sense, but there is a question here about you still there? What was that?
Yeah, I am here.
Okay.
I was in the car driving by.
Yeah, all right. What about the warnings in the Bible not to use black magic in Scripture? What was all that about? I mean, that's a pretty simple question, I think, but I'll let you take that one.
I mean, I think there's actually only one warning, and that is that you shall not suffer a witch to live, even though within
Leviticus.
a short period of time, I think it's Saul goes and actually does talk to a witch and does not cause her to die at the end of that. What that injunction is that you don't want to do things that are anti-God, anti the divine, anti the ultimate divine. And most of magic as we know it today is not that. It's all very connected with the divine process and isn't really against it at all. If you try to utilize magic to do things that are mean to others or that just benefit you at the expense of others, in other words, I want to be rich and, I don't care about where it comes from or, that is black magic, and that is not going to lead you to a good place. And ultimately it will further encumber you within your life. But utilizing spiritual forces and even different spiritual systems, there's nothing anti-God or anti-spiritual about it per se. It's kind of how you utilize those things that really defines it. And your own sort of internal spiritual barometer is what, if it feels like what you're doing is a little wonky, then it is, and you should stop doing it. If it feels like
most of us know right from wrong, I think. I would hope. And if
you don't, then you're already on the path to perdition. It's not doing any particular thing is not going to change that. If you can't figure out what is a nice thing to do and what is a not nice thing to do, you're already in trouble. So
right.
I think most people can handle it. I think that there are definitely places that people can go pretty easily. We all sort of know the story. There's a few of them, but, one is where you get sort of too much power and that makes you feel arrogant and you start to think it's about you rather than the stuff that you're working with. And that leads you in the wrong direction. And the other is that you basically are like, I want something so badly that I will literally give anything for it. And that's sort of the Faust story where you're so obsessed with something, whether it is a woman, whether it is money, whether it is knowledge, that you're willing to sacrifice anything for it, that's obviously going to bring you into a place of slavery that is not an enlightened position. But the idea that there's a final sort of, that each action kind of has this sort of finality to it is just silly. I mean, Jesus basically said that as long as you ask for forgiveness, you're going to be forgiven. So, it's a bit of a dangerous concept if you think about it. Because,
I can do this, and all I got to do is ask, and I'm good.
You can screw up a lot. Yeah. But I mean, the truth is that's true if you are really asking for forgiveness. If you're really, done with it. If you're just asking for forgiveness so you can do it again the next week, then you're not quite getting it. But if you are ready to let go of something that was negative and destructive in your life, of course, the universe.
Yeah, we've had those experiences, right? All of us that have partied a little bit and maybe have done a substance we weren't supposed to do, and you're laying in a bedroom at a party all by yourself, and your heart's just thumping, right? And you're going, "Go, God, I promise if you let me live through this, I won't do it again. Forgive me." That's really asking for forgiveness, That's when you're asking for forgiveness, not forgive me for, robbing that person and getting that nice car. Please let me keep the car. Thanks. And then walking off, Well,
I mean, and the thing is, like, if you say that about the substance and then you go use the substance again the next weekend,
right.
You're kind of moving in a negative place. But at the same time, Jesus was super clear. How many times am I supposed to forgive my brother who transgresses against me? And he says something like 7 times 70, which is a metaphor for, endlessly. So,
and not to, all the books that I've found on Jesus outside of the and I've gotten a few more texts here about Christianity. I'll just say all of the books that I've found out about Jesus outside of Christianity have been about either his Eastern or Essene practices, or the magic that he did. Even some Hebrew texts talk about it. So I don't think we really understand the full story of whoever that character was, as far as what we've been told. Now,
but that's very conspiracy theory. I'm just trying to address it as it is. Like there really there isn't as hard and fast a prohibition against any particular thing as would be presented in a Sunday school.
Okay, let's see. Let me go down. I wish I would have never did this texting thing, because nobody calls. They want to text now, which I get that. It's 2000 and whatever.
It's easy.
So does Jason really believe in angels, or does Jason think that angels are just a myth? I think you spelled something wrong here. But what are angels to you, apparently? I thought we had talked about that earlier, but maybe they weren't here.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'll just repeat what I said before. The universe is an intelligent place. It has all sorts of guiding intelligences to it. And absolutely, I believe that there are consciousnesses that guide things beyond our understanding. They are ultimately a part of the same continuum of consciousness that we are a part of. And so we are all connected with one another. But absolutely, there are guiding intelligent forces in the universe that are trying to move things in positive ways. And there are guiding intelligent forces in the universe that are moving things in, we'll say, less skillful direction. But neither are particularly harmful necessarily. They're just pushing things in different directions that help to evolve things. You have to have things collide into each other every once in a while in order for transformation to take place.
So I'm going to tell you guys a story real quick about one of Jason's meditations that I forget what path it was. It was one of the first ones. And in that and I don't want to give it totally away, but in that meditation, Jason, so it's like Jason is there in your head telling you the things that you're going to see. So he's guiding you through this visualization, kind of like you're going on a trip. And at first you're just relaxed and you just start to kind of visualize things. But I will tell you, I think it was the third time I did it when you really vibrated that one angelic name. I think it was Sandalphon. I think. Yeah. Because it's been so long, is when I had a very weird experience that I can't explain to this day. I mean, I know my body felt kind of paralyzed, but I was kind of going in and out of hypnagogia. So I was fighting myself through this thing, and I could tell in your voice that I was supposed to let go, but I don't think I never did. But it was so powerful and intense. And this is just like one audio, and it's kind of one of those experiences you have when you hear somebody that's done DMT and they come back and they try to explain it, but I can't put words to it. But just in one of your audios, it took me to a place to where I had some major stuff I was dealing with, and that was just on the first path. So you do have this kind of ramped up system. You've managed to make that. I wonder if anybody else has those type of experiences that use your stuff, or if that was just me.
No, it's a pretty regular thing that I hear from people. Listen, I want to answer a few more questions, but you said you give away some things. Let me give you a couple of recordings, and you can give them away to people. All right?
Okay, cool. What do you got?
Just remind me.
Okay, I'll just remind you. I'll remind you.
I'll give away the first path working, and I'll give away the new initiation into the new Hermetic. So those are pretty strong things that I feel good about.
Gotcha. That's cool. All right.
The new initiation into the new Hermetics is cool because it takes the idea. Timothy Leary talked about that we all have little mini brains. He considered there was 8 circuits to our brain that were each little mini brains, and I kind of went off with that, but it went in a few different directions too. But basically, it takes you through each of those kind of spaces in consciousness that are kind of a self. Like, for instance, we all have a self in ourselves that's a fearful self. That's our first self, that it just wants to make sure that we're going to be safe. And that's a lot of the sort of religious worries that people have actually come from that self. Like, am I going to be in trouble if I do this thing? Am I going to die, or am I going to get hurt? That's one self. And then there's just the ground of consciousness itself. And so it basically takes you through each of those layers to the ground of consciousness itself. So that's a cool meditation, and I'll let you give away to people if you want.
Awesome. And I'll leave links to that stuff too for the archives for anybody that wants to do that. Why would anybody in the world ... want to invoke or evoke a demon? That's a good question.
It is a good question. I think that there's 3 reasons. Reason one is that they want something material in the world that they feel is the demon can give to them, and I think that's honestly the reason that most people do it. They want money, and they feel like the demon can create money because it's in control of that stuff, or they want a girl and whatever they want. That's the first reason. The second reason is because a demon, being a particular level of intelligence that's a little bit more independent, so to speak, from the governing body of the universe, might be willing to give some sort of information that would not be allowed by the powers that be. So if you talk to an angel, they're going to be like, "No, I got to check with my superior before I can talk to you about this." Right. Whereas if you talk to a demon, you're more likely to just get an answer. It might not be a true answer, but it'll be like a straight up answer. And then the third is that, ultimately the universe wants to move into a state of perfection. And so by speaking to those imperfect parts of it and connecting with them and allowing them to integrate in our consciousness and sort of forgive, or that's too arrogant of a term to use, but like to allow them to no longer feel in competition or in antagonism with them, we help to heal the universe and move it into a more, congenial place or enlightened place. Those are really the three reasons.
Yeah, I've struggled talking about that too, but I would say that even Daskalos, which was a real famous Christian mystic, talked about demons, and he was, I guess you could say, such as an enlightened Christian mystic, that he kind of kept them around and felt sorry for them, almost like they were stray pets, so to speak. In the Kabbalah, they talk about the tikkun, which is the fixing of the universe. That basically that there were two creations. The first creation was an aborted creation, and the second creation was the one that we're a part of. And basically the fragments of that first creation are the demonic forces in the universe. And that part of our job as beings who are moving into spirit is to kind of take up these fractured bits and put them back in place and move into a more loving and happy and harmonious world. And so the adepts of the world, our job is to, as much as possible, when we're driving around, someone honks at us and behaves like an asshole, then we just sort of forgive them. And, I get it. I believe you on that. I really do, because most of the people that I've met in my life that I consider real adepts and real magicians, they don't get mad easily. They don't pop off easily. They tend to be very warm and kind people, almost like children to a certain extent. And I don't know about you, but that's been my experience. But I haven't met a whole lot of adepts, just maybe 3 or 4 in my lifetime. But they've all been very, you can't really affect them. You can try, but you're not going to,
And if they're doing their work, what they're trying to do is to help you to let go of those weird, negative attachments and so forth that are going on in your consciousness to allow that healing of the universe to take place. And we're all back and forth on that. So there's no one who's a perfect being. Maybe Christ, maybe the Buddha, maybe, but we with Jesus, there were several stories where he kind of gets pissed off at stuff.
Here's a good one.
Moving through things.
Yeah. Here's a good one. I guess they're on your website right now. What are the purposes of the different magic circles?
You mean of my circles? Or,
yeah, they got to be, because I think they're on your website, because that's what the message says. They got to be on your website.
Okay. Well, a few of them are for specific forms of magic. Basically, what I've discovered since I've been kind of working with them is that creating that circular space for you to work in, really, it does create a little model of the universe for you to be existing in, and it creates more than the medieval, or that's not even accurate, the 17th and 18th century magical circles, when that was really the big thing, was creating these specific circles with all these god names around them protected. The idea was that you're putting all these things down in order to stop the demons from being able to cross over your circle. But I don't really think that's really the magic of the circle. Really, it is a cosmograph. It's a way of you sort of defining your space where you're going to be working, and the things that are going on in your space. When I sit I've got a circle that has all the 22 Hebrew letters and all the Golden Dawn colors. It's like a rose. In the Golden Dawn, in their inner order, they've got a rose cross that has this sort of rose that has 22 petals that has the Hebrew letters in them. And when I sit in that space, it doesn't feel like I'm being protected from, dangerous demonic forces or anything. It more feels like I am sitting in a balanced place that is a representation of my little universe that I'm creating in order to do my specific work that I'm doing, like my path working or my ritual, whatever it is that I'm working on. My new Hermetic circle basically has the new Hermetic stuff, in the 4 quarters. So, that's very specific to that way of approaching things. The, Enochian and the Goetic circles obviously are for working with those kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then
that's another question I wanted to ask you is about, crap. I got to take a break here. About the Enochian magic. Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, can I ask you about that? If you just hang out with us just for a few more minutes, because I'd like to talk to you about that.
Like I told you, I don't. My kids are all asleep. It's no big deal.
It's quiet. It's quiet at the Newcombs right now. Okay, sorry, we've got to take a break. We'll be right back.
Covered with ice, still clutching her poor frozen shears. To all the blossoms that she fashioned by hand and watered with all her young tears. There has got to be a heaven where he can play among heavenly gods.
This is Elle. I listen to Lighting the Void because it's interactive radio with good content, interesting guests, and a humble host, sharing this journey through the esoteric. Hey, Joe Roop. Thanks for having us along for the ride.
Thank you so much. What a delightful evening.
Well, I got a lot of ground to cover.
Hi, this is Aaron Hunter, host of Real Paranormal Activity, the podcast where we tell real paranormal experiences of people from around the world. And we also conduct interviews with authors, investigators, psychics, and mediums. Real people, real stories, real fear. Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on The Fringe FM. See you then.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Poor water quality is a major health issue, and it's only getting worse. Municipalities can't keep up, standards have dropped, and pollutants are increasing. Where does it all end? It ends by keeping the pollutants outside of your home with HydroCare's advanced systems available at Wave Home Solutions. No less than the best purification materials and processes have been developed by HydroCare to provide you with healthy, clean water for drinking, cooking, and showering. HydroCare far surpasses the competition in removing chlorine, odors, iron, lead, chemicals, limescale, and much more. Don't settle for less when it comes to your water. We'll take care of the toughest water problems for you, whether it's from a city or well source. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, call 888-997-WAVE. That's 888-997-WAVE. Or go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
Follow The Fringe FM on Facebook and Twitter at The Fringe FM. Start your evenings with The Fringe FM long before those other shows get started. Exclusively live on The Fringe FM, hear the Quantum Hologram Matrix with the Reverend John Polk, Tuesdays at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. And our newest show, Sci-Spy Radio with Suzanne Ross, Wednesdays at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. Then stay up because we're burning the midnight oil well into the morning hour. The truth is out there, and so are we. Lock it in, The Fringe FM.
Remember, if you guys want to call in, it's 1-800-588-0335. I really appreciate some of you guys like my new taste in bumper music. I'm still keeping the same old return music, but I'm trying some new stuff out. I told you I would, and I appreciate your feedback. I see it. But yeah, we're here with Jason Augustus Newcomb. We're talking about Hermetic Magic, his system, the new Hermetics, all of his cool stuff that he has to offer, his meditations, his books. And by the way, if you're a fan of audiobooks, I will say that you even have some books there that I found. Just, the basic, I would say the Hermetica, which is really cool. So if you don't understand Hermeticism, I mean, you got Jason there too. There's a lot of audiobooks on there that goes through that. Are you still continuing to do audiobooks? Please say yes. I hope you are.
Yes, I'm gonna develop some more. Actually, I'm gonna probably do them myself, just because the amount of time that guys take to do it's sort of. Anyway, I don't want to get into that too much, but
yeah,
I've enjoyed working with most of them, but there've been a few where it's been like kind of a nightmare. So
yeah, I understand. From the audio aspect, they're pretty picky.
Yeah.
Here's a question that I want to ask that I know is on a lot of people's mind, especially that are in the Golden Dawn or trying to do Golden Dawn work. And this, I won't say the name of the author because I'll just be nice. But in the book, he talks about, look, when you do this work, when you go through the elemental grades of this Rosicrucian work, you're not to practice any other magic. However, you can read anything you want. Just stick with these practices. Now, the problem that I found with that is when I get to more advanced books, like say from Gordon White, maybe Jason Miller, some of your stuff. Of course, your stuff kind of corresponds with the Golden Dawn, but most of it, there's stuff in here that I was like, well, I could sure use that in my life. And I kind of want to do it, but I don't want to negate all of this work that I've done in the Golden Dawn. So do you do it? Or do you got to start over? Does it negate everything? What's going on there?
Okay. So, I mean, I think there's actually probably 10 questions in that one question.
Yeah, sorry. I tend to do that a lot.
No, it's okay. The simplest answer to that is you are your own magical barometer. If you feel like you can't handle something, you should stay away from it. If you are afraid that demons can control you, if you too early try and contact them, stay away from it, because the very thought that they can control you is going to give them the power to control you. So you're the best barometer for that sort of stuff. The truth is, the Golden Dawn system, as it was, in the 20 years that the Golden Dawn really functioned as its original organization, you didn't do any really magic at all other than the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram until you were in the adept or the portal, at least.
Right.
And so really what you were learning was a bunch of stuff. And that's what my 60 days challenge is all about. Not that I'm trying to pitch that too much, but you were learning the sort of the rudiments of the system, the astrology, so you understood the symbols and understood the energies that were going on in Western magic. And you weren't really a practical magician until you were an Adeptus Minor, really. So the stuff that we do nowadays, that a lot of groups do, it's very modern. The Golden Dawn itself is very modern. It's a late 19th century thing. So this idea that you can or can't do certain things because somebody says so is really not rooted in anything other than somebody's imagination or their own fears or whatever.
I've asked this question to a magician that I followed for a very long time that I looked up to, and there's besides you, there's 4 or 5 that I really look up to. And they all have different things. They all do different things. But this guy was like, and I asked him that question. And I said, look, man, you're selling courses, too, that talk about, planetary magic and thought forms and all this other stuff. But you're preaching the Golden Dawn, and you want me to use this book, right? This so-called textbook of the Golden Dawn. And in that textbook, the guy says, don't do anything else besides this system until you become an adept. Then you can do whatever you want. You'll understand freedom at a whole new level, right? And what he answered back to me was, well, yeah, I mean, you shouldn't be doing that stuff. And if you are doing it, then I need to put your I guess you could say your discipline or your commitment in question. And I'm like, damn, what's up with all this psychological warfare? I see magicians out there like you and Gordon White and Jason Miller and people that really are doing great things in the community and teaching this stuff. And I know they're manifesting certain things in their life because they've confessed it and showed it. And yet they're okay. So why are you saying this? So there is that like core belief that you have to go through this old style, rough, Plato / old style initiation system where you've got to suffer for some reason. Is that more? 10 questions in one again? I think it was.
This may have to do with a change in eon or age. That we're moving into the Aquarius age and things are shifting. That may be a part of it, or it may simply be what I was suggesting earlier, which is that people kind of repeat what they've been told without necessarily thinking it through all that clearly. And yes, there are certain rules of thumb. It's a good idea not to, conjure up an archdemon as your first act of magic. That sort of should be obvious. But and like the questioner asked, there may be no reason to conjure up an archdemon at all in your whole magical career. Like many people will find that that's the case. Although there is the idea that at a certain point you need to align the whole universe from top to bottom. And so at a certain point you need to communicate with the negative aspects of the universe in order to kind of place them in their proper places within it. But is an artificial construct like a specific order or organization the only way to decide where you are on that scale? No, not at all. I think that no logical person or even an illogical spiritual person would feel that any particular organization has the complete rules for how the universe should be conducted.
Yeah, right.
That's just simply, it's absurd. So if you feel compelled to do something, maybe it's something that you need to do. Or maybe it's some negative part of yourself that is going to bite you in the butt, but that also will be a learning experience for yourself. So, I feel like, you don't want to, the one thing you don't want to do that I see happening a lot with people is just sort of shifting from system to system in order to sort of stay at the valley level and never kind of climb up the mountain. That I think is the problem that more people face. And, this week I'm going to be really into pranayama, and next week I'm going to be really into, Christian centering prayer. This week I'm really going to be into Buddhist mindfulness prayer, and this week I'm going to be really into Taoist breathing exercise. That's a good way of sort of never getting anywhere because you're just sort of circling around at exercise one in 100 different systems. But if you feel like, well, I've been working on this thing and I really feel open at this level and I'm feeling called to work with X, Y, or Z. I mean, follow that inclination, at least, on a mental level, and see how it goes. Like, okay, so, when I was a younger magician, there was a point in my life where I started feeling like I really needed to call up the devil and have a conversation with him. Because I felt like, we're all so caught up in this, Judeo-Christian model where there's this.
Yeah, and we've never really gotten to know the devil, have we? It's like,
no, I mean,
who's this guy?
He's this negative entity that is hell bent for our destruction. I was like, I feel like I need to converse with this energy and see what it's all about. And so I called it up, and it kind of knocked me over and messed up my life in some ways. But, you know, I picked up the pieces and I continued kind of interacting with it a bit, not in the sense of like, you know, you're like a Satanist, although I'm not telling people that are Satanists that there's anything wrong with what they're doing either. But that wasn't the way that I approached it. It was more like, what is this entity? What is this energy of, you know, this like diabolical figure that's trying to, you know, hell-bent on seizing the souls of humanity and pulling them down into hell. Like, what is this? Let me talk to it.
Let's see what's really going on, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, and part of my agenda was to kind of like integrate it in the sense of like, you know, how could I accept that beingness in a way that would, you know.
So did you meet the devil?
Allow it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what did he tell you? Did he say everything they said about me is all lies? It's all a lie.
No, not at all. No, not at all. In fact, the interaction was much more about sort of control of the experience. It was, you know, aha, you've invited me in, so now I'm taking control. that was the path that I went through with it. I don't think everyone would have that exact experience, because that was probably where my mind was about power and, you know, who was commanding this or that. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was about like, you have foolishly called me in, and so I'm taking control of this situation. And,
oh hell,
you know, that was my little, you know, wrestling.
And you dug yourself out of it, though, right? But that doesn't mean it's everybody's wrestle. That would probably be mine too. That comes from I think even if you're not a Christian, there's this idea in your head that like, what if the devil is real? You know, like
right. Well, and the real question to ask yourself there is like, what is real and what is not real? Because the devil is real because it's a real thing that really impacts. Like, the devil is so much more real than any one of us, because the idea of the devil affects so much more in the world than we will ever affect. So even if it's not, you know, even if the devil doesn't have a body in the same way that we do, it's way more real than any of us are.
Yeah, and then like in grimoire magic and stuff, what I learned about Lucifer was like Lucifer was the guy people called on to definite. Okay, so if you wanted to manifest something, Lucifer could do it for you, right? And
sure.
And I was thinking, all right, so I'm reading some books about it, and these books, more than one book, and I talked to my audience about this the other night, just kind of messed with them a little bit. I was talking about this crossroads ritual, and I'm like, crossroads ritual. I started thinking about Bone Thugs and Harmony, their song Crossroads, and then I got into the whole conspiracy of all these artists and blues artists going to the crossroads, and then the more I dug into it, I was like, okay, this is real. Like, people have really done this, and they've gotten what they wanted, and they've talked about it in interviews where they said, look, I made a deal with the devil, you know. And I was like, okay, but they didn't look at it like it was some super crazy thing. Maybe Bone did a little bit. So I asked my audience at the end, I was like, look, if you knew for a fact that you could have whatever you wanted, and all you had to do was make a deal with Lucifer. You didn't have to give him your soul, but maybe hook him up with some rum and some chips or something, you know? And it would happen. Would you do it? And everybody just kind of freaked out about it. I got tons of emails talking about, I knew you were a black magician, blah, 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 blah. And all I was trying to do was just ask a question and understand something from a psychological point of view as to why people do that to begin with. And I think really all it is from what you're telling me, is this curious nature of, you know, is this real? And then once they learn it's real, they have to deal with it afterwards, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. But
that's all that was, folks. I wasn't doing it or trying to get people to do it. Okay. But
yeah,
I was just having a little fun.
I'm absolutely not encouraging people to conjure Lucifer as anything like their first thing that they do. The interesting thing about the whole pact with the devil thing. It's actually a fairly modern thing. I mean, obviously it goes back to witchcraft trials and so forth. But in terms of actual practices that people do, it really occurs only in the late 18th and early 19th century books do you even see anything like that. You never see it in earlier versions of the Key of Solomon or anything like that. It's really it's a product of a certain way of looking at things, and I think largely the story of Faust plays a significant role in it. But what's interesting about the Faust literature is that most of it actually the actual practices that are suggested in it don't actually involve you giving your soul, or if you do sort of like offer up your soul a little bit within it, there's always like a way out of it within the way that you've done it. So like the whole idea is to like get all the benefit without the repercussions that might come from it. And that was a very popular thing psychologically for people, was that, how can I get all the benefits that the devil could give me without having but the thing is, like, if you look at that from look at your soul as something that can have weights in it or feathers in it. The feathers make it lighter and the weights make it heavier. Like, the idea that you're going to try and get some sort of deal where you get a bunch of material benefits but don't actually have your soul get taken is just preposterous on its in its entirety, because you're basically saying, how can I weigh down my soul with a bunch of weights but then also have it fly up to heaven? That's just, you can't do the two things. They're incompatible with each other. And so the whole premise is flawed. A person who wants to create a bunch of additional impediments to their spiritual awakening is creating impediments to their spiritual awakening. They aren't moving towards, even if they later repent of that, they're still dealing with what they've done. So, this whole premise of, I'm worried that the devil is going to get my soul if I do X, Y, or Z. It's only where your trajectory is focused that it's going to create that or not create that. It has nothing to do with whether you
the story
practiced,
so to speak, right? So again, you're saying like where your focus goes, energy, where focus goes, that's where energy goes. So like if you're thinking,
right, like
if you think a part of you just made a bad deal, but maybe you can get away with it, but there's some deep-seated thing in your subconscious that is like, I just made a deal with Lucifer. You probably did, and it's probably going to manifest in your life in a bad way, probably in a good way and a bad way. Everything that you focus on is going to come to it's going to happen, I would think, in a certain way.
I mean, you think about like what it's like to be on your deathbed.
Okay,
you're on your deathbed. You're about to die, and you spent your whole life being like Ebenezer Scrooge, just worrying about your own self, your own profit, blah blah blah. You're in a terrible position. Whereas if you have spent your whole life trying to help other people, trying to be a good person, even if those ways in which you were trying to be a good person were not necessarily from the most enlightened perspective, but you were giving yourself in a nice way to the world and trying to do good things. Those two people can be very different people. There can be a person who spends their whole life as a minister who's more like Ebenezer Scrooge, and that fucker is not gonna, excuse my language, is not gonna be at the end of their life, they're not going to be rising to heaven, even if they've been talking about that kind of stuff. But if their actual focus is on, obtaining as much wealth as they can at the expense of other people, or laughing at people for being so stupid as to give their money to them or something like that, they have defined their level. Whereas even a person who is a Satanist who spends their whole life trying to make other people's life better is feels free at the time that they die and not worried about what is going to happen to them, is going to be freer than the person who has been just focused on the material world in some mean and petty way.
Right on.
And if you can try and disagree with that, but honestly, there's no real logical way of fighting that argument, because we're either a stone or we're a feather. You can't pretend that you're anything else. Like whatever. You're making the world a better place, and you're freeing yourself from attachment to this world, or you're trying to get some sort of false benefit of a nonsensical temporary physical world.
Right. I totally agree. 780 area code. You're on the air. Do you have a question for Jason Augustus Newcomb? Hello.
I thought we had a question. That would have been fun.
Yeah. Well, he's on the line. I don't know why I can't hear him though. I don't see him coming through. Maybe call back. Call back. That's probably just a bad connection. That's Edmonton, Canada.
Yeah.
That was weird. Anyways, so what about, shoot, I only got a few minutes left till the last break here. I wanted to talk to you about the Holy Guardian Angel, because this is like on the other end of the spectrum, something that I'm a little bit more fascinated with, because the Holy Guardian Angel, I've always been fascinated with that subject, because I would like to think that thing is real, and I don't mean just from like a mythical point of view. Like there's actually this angel that is looking out for me all the time, and isn't that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but isn't that what Crowley did when he went to, I guess, what was it, Boleskine or wherever he went to do his ritual that he never finished? He was trying to come in contact with Holy Guardian Angel, right?
Yes.
So, in your experience, you don't have to tell us if you did this or not, but is this what we call the HGA, or the Holy Guardian Angel? Is it real? Does it really exist?
Well, again, just like I was talking about with Lucifer, the Holy Guardian Angel exists much more than we do. We're a super temporary phenomenon, whereas that is something that influences things on a much more massive scale than we do. But even setting aside that sort of verbal way of evading it, no, yeah, absolutely. There's a component of universal consciousness that has been set aside for each of us that guides us in the direction that we're supposed to go in life. And there are some people who come into the world and they feel a strong sense of that, and they know who they are, and they kind of feel like they know the direction that they're supposed to be going. The vast majority of people do not feel that way. They feel like they are rudderless, that they do not understand who they are, what their purpose is, or where they're supposed to be going. And the initial phase of spiritual awakening is discovering that guidance system that we each have inside of ourselves. And so when a Golden Dawn person says, oh, don't do any magic until you have gone through the elemental grade systems, what they're really saying, although they may just be repeating something that their teachers said, but what they're really saying is don't do a bunch of stuff until you have connected with that Holy Guardian Angel, which is that guiding tutelary spirit, which is what you came into the world to do. And there are a number of different theoretical positions on what it is. Some people say it is an oversoul that is, responsible for a bunch of different people. Some people say that it is a construct that exists between yourself and universal consciousness. The sort of earliest Western version of it is in Plato's Republic, in the story of where each of us chooses a daemon or destiny that is going to guide us through our lives, and then we have to drink from the river of forgetfulness as we move into the earth. But that guiding tutelary spirit is always present with us, kind of quietly trying to lead us back to the purpose that we chose before we incarnated. And that idea has kind of gone through a bunch of different filters through the years, and ended up in Crowley's system in its way that it is there. But the essence of it is simply that we have a kind of a trajectory that we're intending to be on from the moment that we're born. And if you explore kind of who you were as a child and what you were drawn to and where you felt your spirit shine, that was all that holy guardian angel directing you. And a lot of practices within my work and within the work of other Western systems is about connecting with that. And then there are a lot of parts of Western systems that aren't about that at all. And those parts that aren't about that at all are the ones that people are continually telling you not to be involved in until you've fulfilled that first part of connecting with your holy guardian angel.
Right.
Hopefully that's enough information.
Yeah, it is for sure. I could tell that was, and that was something that was also important to you too, because that's important to me. Because that's one of the biggest things that one of the biggest reasons I got into this is because a part of this process is trying to figure out not just enlightenment, but also trying to figure out, who we are, where did we come from, so to speak, and what's this all about, and are we really alone? And speaking of which, we only got a few more minutes here, guys. So if you want to call back, reset the phone system, whoever that was from Canada, so you guys can call back. I do see some of your texts. I haven't really looked at them, but I did see the notifications. But we'll be right back with Jason Augustus Newcomb, guys.
Is out there.
There's something out here.
And so are we. KTLK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
Who were the real ancient Egyptians? What is it about ancient Egypt that captivates us all? The critically acclaimed series Magical Egypt is back with all new episodes. Let Chance Gardner and company take you on another adventure through Magical Egypt in the new series Magical Egypt 2. Magical Egypt 2 attempts a forensic reconstruction of the science of the ancients through a study of ancient aesthetics. Also, the best researchers and authors in the field like John Anthony West, Graham Hancock, Laird Scranton, Robert Duval, Lon Duquette, Aaron Cheek, and more join together to explore the topics of the esoteric and the hidden messages of the ancient Egyptians. Just go to magicalegypt.com right now and put in the code word FRINGE and get 10% off any download or order, including the groundbreaking original Magical Egypt series, as well as the new episodes in Magical Egypt 2. Also, check out the great work and the companion series at magicalegypt.com. Click the banner on the Fringe FM or go to magicalegypt.com and use the code word FRINGE and get 10% off your order today while it lasts.
All right, everyone, this is Justin from the UK. Excuse the chitty. If you're into the Fringe and you want to hear the brass tacks, my old china plate, Joe Roop and his guests on Lighting the Void will open your mince pies. You need to shut your north and south and use your 10-speed gears and listen to them bubble. You could hear a Barry Crocker, no Brussels, but he ain't no holy friar. Anyway, you beat a Barnaby Rudge and take a butcher's.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Hello, this is Vance Nesbitt. Take the time to expand your mind by listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop right here on the Fringe FM.
Follow the Fringe FM on Facebook and Twitter at the Fringe FM.
Lighting the Void is proud to announce Mind and Magic's Protection and Defense course for protection from magical and psychic attacks. This is not a joke. Magic practitioners are on the rise, and with that comes attacks from baneful or black magicians that try to harm or hurt others for their own selfish reasons. If you are not a believer in psychic attacks, then this isn't for you. If you are, and you want the power to defend yourself and your family and home, then I highly suggest you grab Freighter Xavier's Protection and Defense course. In this course, you will learn how to tell if you are under attack from a natural source or if an individual is attacking you. The 4 forms of curses and attacks. How to remove self-imposed curses. The correct way to cleanse your home from negativity or malevolent entities. How to make your own holy water. What you should always keep near or under your bed. Herbs that banish negativity and promote purity. The most powerful banishing rituals on the planet. And for those that seem to want to harm you the most, how to put your enemies in a hell pit of their own making. You can also learn protection against shadow people and other entities. Or are you just in a bad planetary alignment? Even how to get rid of an enemy using a tic-tac box. It does not matter what your faith or belief is, this will work. Click the banner on the website at lightingthevoid.com or go to lightingthevoid.com/Xavier.
Want to know what's on The Fringe FM? Check out our schedule at thefringe.fm.
All right, guys, last chance to call in is 1-800-588-0335. We're here with Jason Augustus Newcomb. Cool thing is during the breaks, you don't really get to hear what we talk about. But having somebody...
we talk about all kinds of great stuff, right?
Yeah. But having somebody that's really read Robert Monroe like as much as I have is really cool, man, because, yeah, you're right. Robert Monroe never did talk about manifesting things as much as he did... The one thing I could say that he did when he was doing astral travel, which is something, I could talk to you about, is he would do experiments to where, like pinching people or just seeing if what he really saw was really going down. But not so much manifesting stuff, but interacting or interfacing.
He was very interested in proof. He was interested in proof in the first book, particularly. He was interested in proof that like what he was doing was actually not just in his head. But then in the next 2 books, he really has kind of like moved away from that into just sort of I accept that what what this is what it is. But yeah, he mentions the law of attraction indirectly in the first book, I think. But he and so kind of opens up the door to it. And I think that his kids and the other people who have worked in the Monroe Institute have developed some programs that relate to that. But he himself, like, I want to say, like, he kind of makes it seem like they're 2 different realms, that they don't interact really much at all.
Right. Well, even the woman he pinched, he was like, hey, I'm talking to you. Are you going to remember this? And she said, yes, Robert, I'm going to remember this. And he's like, no, you've said this before. I'm going to make sure. And then he pinches her, and I'm butchering what he actually said, but he pinches her and then goes back and said, hey, did you get pinched at this spot? And she's like, yeah, was that you? And she didn't remember talking to him, which I find is really weird.
She didn't remember it at all.
But she did get pinched.
I'm reminded of the fact that I think it's the second book, he goes to a future world. And in that world, the people are able to like make things out of dirt. They hold things in their hands and they become things, like food or something.
Yeah, that was in the second book, I think. Yeah.
So that's kind of a magical thing, but for the most part, it seems like the two worlds are very separate, and he personally seems not interested in the material world at all. Like, his attitude, at least his stated attitude, is that, you know, he was successful. He started a bunch of companies, and, you know, he'd conquered the material world. He didn't give a crap about it. He was more interested in this weird world.
Right.
Whereas I think the vast majority of people are in a different position. They feel like, I haven't figured out how to conquer the material world, and I want to be more in control of that. And so that's the sort of temptation that Magick has that could end up being negative.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, that when they mock about magic in that sense, as far as the material world goes, it goes, well, look, if magic is real and these people are really manifesting things by using magic, how come they're not super rich, right? How come they're not super wealthy? Right. And I would say, well, this is my answer. Do you know any super wealthy magicians that have admitted to you they practice magic? Number one. And I think a lot of the times people like, I would say me or maybe you, maybe are just not so interested in super material things and more interested in enlightenment and self-realization and traveling other realms. Of course, it would be nice to have some things.
But ultimately, the more time you spend in those other realms, the more you realize that the material world is just kind of like the bottom.
Yeah, it's the bottom side.
So why even? It's like saying, how come you don't like have a really pretty toilet?
Right.
I don't really need. It's just for pooping. I don't really need it to be solid gold.
Yeah, I've
got other things to do.
It's that bad here. If you look at the Kabbalah, this is the bottom. Other than the clip-off, I guess it just keeps going further, which is something I've never really experienced, but I know Lon Milo Duquette talks about, and some other people when they talk about astral travel, that there is like these even lower realms than this, like hellish type crazy realms. Have you ever seen that or been there? Have you ever been there?
No, I haven't really explored that all that much, to be honest.
You would want to, right?
The idea of like trying to find something that is the worst possible thing, it has never really appealed to me as a place to explore. There may come a time in the future when I feel like that's necessary for me to do, but I kind of suspect it won't happen. I think that there's enough examples of the bad things in life that you can get just from the material world. You don't have to go, let's see if we can go any deeper into the worst possible things that you can experience.
Yeah. The reason why I think I would do that is to prove if I've got a very curious mind and nature, and sometimes it bites me for being that way. And speaking of which, I want to go into the void and get just a little bit deep here with you. There is there's this idea that I'm starting to pick up from people that believe in things like animism, Rudolf Steiner type beliefs. And then I've read Carl Jung, and I'm trying to put all this together real quick, and I hope people can follow me here. And people that have done things like dimethyltryptamine, where they just talk about wherever they went was more vivid and more real than this realm. And so when we take these trips, let's just say journeying or astral travel, or we have an etherical astral projection or whatever, we want to say that it wasn't real, that it was in our mind. But I'm starting to think that place is a little bit more real than what we believe, if that makes any sense at all.
Sure.
That it's not just in the brain.
There's a significant number of people who are really conservative scientific thinkers who legitimately believe that behind you is nothing until you look at it. There's literally nothing there because it's a quantum soup that has not become a clear solidified thing until it is observed. That has been proven again and again in laboratory experiments. And so there are a lot of people who basically feel that the universe is in a state of uncertainty until it isn't, by observation. And so when you observe something, whether it's something in the outside world or something inside your consciousness, you are developing something, and there's no real reason to believe that the thing that you're experiencing in an internal process is any less real than the thing that you're experiencing in an external process.
Oh my God, I just got a really weird feeling. Is that why sometimes, and I get what you're saying, the whole double slit experiment that has to be observed, kind of like we're living in a video game and what we're seeing in front of us is the television type thing. But when I was a kid, I used to get, and this happened to me a couple of times, I would get touched like on the shoulder. And I'm not talking about poked. I'm talking about you could literally feel somebody grab your shoulder with fingers, and I would turn around and nothing would be there. That makes me wonder about that. I don't know why I was just thinking about that when you were saying that.
Okay, well, you're going to be talking about drugs in your next thing. So there's a drug called Salvia divinorum. Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, I haven't done it, but yeah.
Okay, well, you have to take a large amount of it for it to really affect you in a profound way, but you can make that happen if you do a little research on it. I've done it a few times, and in each time that I tried to do it, I had when I took large amounts of it, I had the same but very different experiences, and each one I strongly experienced an alternate dimension in which there were intelligent beings that were like very glad to have my presence there. And they were quite welcoming and sort of, oh, it's good to see you, or, but they were different each time. It wasn't the same place each time I went. They were. Now, it's possible that that I was going to the same place, but I was seeing it in different ways, or it's possible that it all was just, random hallucinations. But if I were to be totally honest about my feelings, the beings that I was contacting were legitimately not a part of myself, nor were they angels, nor were they aliens in the sense of, the way we typically think about it. It was alternate dimensions that I was connecting with. Now, the first time that I experienced it, I thought, well, that's kind of weird. The second time I experienced it, that's weird. And the third time I experienced it, I was like, well, what if this entire universe that is happening is actually coming into being as a result of my trip? In other words, that it didn't exist previous to it, but an entire universe with its own rules and laws and so forth came into being simply because my consciousness was moving in that direction. And I know that's something that you can something you can only really understand on drugs, but
all the machine elves and all of the stuff that Terence McKenna talks about, you're saying that it possibly that could have come into being because of him.
And it's absolutely real in the moment that it's there, because it's experientially real. Realistically, if you are having an experience and it feels real, it's real to you, right? I mean, that's one of the things about Robert Monroe, is that like his experiences were very real to him. He didn't, he had no question about that he was having that experience. But it doesn't negate a person who has an entirely different experience of things. And so it's quite possible that, and this is something that, I've said from the beginning of our conversation, and that I more and more feel is true. Consciousness is a constant. Everything else is variables within that. And so I don't question the reality of anything, really. If someone says, I was talking to a demon yesterday and he did X, Y, and Z, I say, okay. That's your experience. Maybe you're lying, but more likely you're having some sort of experience. And I can't define exactly what that.
What about the animism idea? Like everything behind it has a spirit, like rocks and trees and everything. Everything is conscious or has its own consciousness and its own. I think I understand what you're saying. Like we have this very real idea and polar view of consciousness. Like we have this realm and then we've got something else, but really we don't know what that other realm is. All we know is that when we do these things, they're so real that we can't negate it sometimes. And they're all different experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I absolutely feel like rocks and trees and stuff have a consciousness. And if you spend a little time, and even inanimate objects like wine bottles or fire hydrants, they all have a consciousness. If you learn the style of consciousness in which you can communicate with those things, they absolutely can communicate with you and give you insight into yourself and the world that is useful and evolutionary. And that's really, for me, that's the criteria of whether something is stupid or useful. Like if it can help you in your life and it can help you move past the place where you are in your life right now into a place that you've never dreamed of as possible, then it's worth exploring. If it's just going to just keep you in your same place, then it's less useful.
Okay.
Sort of.
So then that means that that you and I could interact consciously in a different way then. And this is another thing that fascinates me that I like to talk about is not just one person experiencing consciousness in a different way, but two or three or a group of people interacting. Like, how Robert Monroe pinched that woman and she said, "Oh yeah, I really got pinched," or he would see things that were really happening. Those types of things.
I've done this like 10 times now. I don't get to teach it constantly because there's limited numbers of groups that are interested in this, but I teach a class on exploring visionary experiences. And so I teach each person to have their own visionary experience. And then I have the people kind of help each other have visionary experiences. And then I move to two people together having a visionary experience at the same time. And then I can move to as many as 4 people I've done who are having the same experience at the same time within the space of 2 hours. People are like, and they feel like, they're very certain that they are all together in this experience together. And we have that ability within our consciousness. And like I said, it's not all that far off. It's not some thing that you have to study for 50 years in order to develop. It's something that's an intimate part. It's something, it's who we are as beings. It's just stripping away some crap that we've learned that tells us that we're not allowed to do it. That's the impediment.
Okay, so I want to talk. All right, so about angels again, real quick. I wanted to bring this up. Systems like the angelic systems and intelligences that are in all these books. Most people just know 3 or 4 angels, but there's so many different angelic names and demon names and different intelligence. It's just so many, right? It's vast. And then there's the Enochian system, which was at the top of the Golden Dawn, which they all admit, no matter how much they fight over the Enochian language, was a pretty powerful thing, Yeah. So,
well, I mean, what stands out about the Enochian? He basically said, "I want to explore a way of connecting with divine intelligence that will give me radical knowledge that is not available otherwise." That was his purpose. And he saw all these, manuscripts of various occult texts that were out there. And he said, they're different from each other. There must be some problems in these. So I'm going to ask these intelligences themselves to kind of correct stuff. So, he basically mostly through the scrying of his partner, Kelly, he received corrected versions of all these things. and then received a lot of gobbledygook and a certain amount of like really coherent stuff through them. And it's pretty fascinating to look through. So the Golden Dawn decided that this stuff was going to be kind of the heart of their system. And so that has brought the Dee and Kelly work into a place of large prominence within, I mean, to the point where there, this, I don't know if your listeners are going to be aware of this, but in the 1960s, there were a huge number of people who started calling themselves witches and doing, witchcraft rituals. Well, they would frequently call to the watchtower of the east, the watchtower of the west, the watchtower of the north, and the watchtower of the south. And that is literally from Dee and Kelly.
Yeah.
that whole concept is straight out of their work. So, it had this influence that is so big in things. The individual pieces of it, like I said, I kind of have the feeling they're similar to my, Salvia Divinorum and DMT experiences, where universes can come up and continue to interact with you. The more attention that you give to them, is the Enochian system the only way of dealing with magic, or the best way? No, I don't think it is. I think it's just one.
Well,
and I think it covers some of the same ground as some of the other systems.
Right.
And in fact, I think that some of the other systems are a little bit more easy to enter than the Enochian system.
Well, I think a lot of the stuff that you do is it makes it easier for all of us to enter. And we've only got like 2 minutes till we got to cut out of here. So I want everyone to make sure that they know how to find you and what they need, maybe something they can start with or whatever. You go ahead and plug away before we get out of here, Jason.
All right. So, I mean, my website, JasonAugustusNewcomb.com, is the best place to go. If you go there, it immediately kind of leads you to a funnel. If you sign up for my mailing list, you'll get a couple of recordings, and Joe's going to have a couple of different recordings too as well. But if you scroll down through all the stuff on my website, you can get to my store, and that's where you can really get to the heart of all the stuff that I do. And I've written a ton of books and stuff. So if you type Jason Augustus Newcomb into the internet, you're going to find a bunch of stuff. Hopefully mostly positive. The place to really begin probably is with the Book of Magic Power or the New Hermetics.
Yeah.
Those are the two books that I would say start with, and from there, the pathworking recordings that you like, I think those are some of the best things I've created.
Right.
The New Hermetics comes there's a bunch of recordings that are related to that, and then there's my courses, the 60-day Adepthood Challenge, the Astral or OBE course, fantastic. The Visionary Magic course, those three courses are amazing. And then I've got a couple of other courses that are also really good. So
thank you so much for coming on the show, guys. Go check that. Thank you so much, Jason. Guys, please go check out JasonAugustusNewcomb.com. I will have the links to the audios that he sends me. And tomorrow night, we're going to have Justin and Paul from Dream and Jaguars talking about the DMT experience. And they're going to actually kind of walk us through it. But we do got to get out of here, so I have to say that this show was produced by The Fringe FM and cannot be syndicated without written permission, and music was by Chronoke, Space Station, Kevin MacLeod, and some of the old stuff from the public domain. We'll see you guys tomorrow night. Thanks again, Jason. It was awesome.
On this program do not necessarily reflect those of the Fringe FM, KTLK Digital Broadcasting, its sponsors, affiliates, or staff. Listener discretion is advised.